Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if neglected Naruto abandoned the son of Artemis. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by mahpa and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Hello, Maine. All was quiet in the Hidden Leaf village as men, women and child walked the streets heading home after their long days. Children walked hand in hand with their mothers and fathers, while lovers held each other's arms tightly. The many different little businesses throughout Konoha began to close up, while the nightlife of the village began to wake up with taverns and bars, beginning to get ready for their rush of customers. From outside the village, invisible to everyone in the village including the shinobi, a figure draped in a grey cloak looked at the village with emotionless eyes. His blue and silver eyes looked at the village before stopping at the Hokage monument just off in the back of the village. So they finally got around to adding her face to it. He said as he blinked and took his gaze away from it. Using his heightened eyesight, he scanned the streets and saw a few old faces walking down the paths. One was Choji Akimichi, who like always was still eating a bag of chips. He had grown larger in both height and weight and wore a kind of red traditional Akimichi armor. His hair had grown much longer, all the way down to his mid-back, and had his ever-happy smile on his face. Beside him was his usual partner in crime, Shikamaru. He too had grown in height but was now shorter than the Akimichi. His long hair was still up in its usual ponytails and was now dressed in the usual Chunin uniform. In his front pocket he could see a grey lighter with a back of smokes just behind it. He watched as the two happily chatted and he smirked when he saw Shikamaru mouth a word troublesome like he normally did. "They're the same as always," he said to himself as his eyes moved away from them. His heightened eyesight, which had improved over the course of 6 months, could now pick up the tiniest of things that could have been hundreds of meters away. Not only that, but his sound and smell had improved as well. His time with the toads had proved most fruitful. As his eyes scanned the streets, his good mood quickly took a nosedive when he spotted a very familiar raven-haired duck-assed bastard walking down the street with his normal scowl on his face. Yes, Sasuke Uchiha was walking down the street, no doubt heading towards the Uchiha compound. Men and women civilians all greeted him as he went past, but he spared no mind to them and simply ignored them as if they were not even there. The bastard had not changed much other than having gotten taller. Sensing his strength, Naruto smirked at the fact that Sasuke had gotten weaker from when he was last in the village, more than 2 years ago now. Though I see some things never change, Naruto thought when he noticed a pink-haired woman following after Sasuke like a lost puppy. Sakura Haruno had not changed much other than her hair had grown longer again and was now wearing civilian clothes. She was spouting out nonsense to Sasuke while the Uchiha just ignored her. No doubt she was trying to find out a way to get Sasuke to marry her again. "I thought I might find you here," a soft voice called from beside him as he turned around to see a woman figure jumping up towards him using the branches and using a cat-like agility and grace in doing so. She appeared next to him and linked one of her arms with his. "How did you know?" he asked as turned to look at his girlfriend Selena, who had not changed much in the last 6 months other than her hair was longer and was currently tied up in a ponytail. Though if one thing had changed about her was that she was now so physically fit, she could probably beat any Olympic runner or gymnast like it was nothing. Her training with him at Mount Myoboku had helped her ascend to levels she did not even know she had or thought was possible. Her running speed, her balance and her physical strength had more than doubled, and with the weight on each of her limbs, she was now carrying up to 100 pounds. And it looked like she was not having any trouble with it at all. Plus, with all her training, she now had a body that would make goddesses envy. When it came to the women gender, Selena was now at the peak of women's fitness and health. Shima had taken an interest in her since Fukasaku was helping Naruto with his senjutsu and had gone about teaching her some shinobi skills. She could not use chakra of course, but instead taught her how to use shinobi weapons, trap making, and helped her with her taijutsu. She had even taken it upon herself to learn Japanese since she wanted to understand what all the different kanji meant. And when it came to her archery skills, Selena could probably content with the experienced members of the hunt since she just seemed to have taken to it like a fish in water. "You have been mumbling about seeing it ever since we came to Mount Myoboku 6 months ago. I knew it would only be a matter of time before you came to see it. I just needed to see it one last time before I finally walk away from it forever," he muttered as Selena placed her head on his shoulder and looked out at the village. "It is quite beautiful. I see what you mean by the nature spirits would have loved the land of fire. It's just one giant forest that seems to stretch on for miles. If Grover came here, I don't think we could get him to leave," he said, making her laugh. "So if this is the last you will see of it, then you won't help them with pain?" Naruto stood silent as he heard her words. That one question had plagued him and been on his mind for months. Would he help the village from the Akatsuki or not? Though there was a small part of him that told him he should since it was his home while his head told him not to. There was nothing to gain from helping them and would only bring later pain to him. He knew that and so did those close to him. If I helped them and won the battle, all that would happen is the village would then turn on me, they would attack me and have me arrested and then lock me away and try and turn me into their weapon. Selena growled. They are a bunch of ungrateful bastard, the whole lot of them. It's why I never want to see it again after today. This village may be home and sunshine to some, but to me it is nothing more than a poison. A bad memory that I just want to forget. Selena went on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek before putting her head back on his shoulder. Then once we leave here for good we will make new memories. Just me, you and the others at Camp Half-Blood. Memories that are worth keeping and ones that bring us joy. Ones we can look back on and smile. Once all this Titan business is over with, we can finally leave the fighting behind. He said as Selena nodded into him. It sounds like a good plan. She said nuzzling into him before she noticed Naruto's cheeky smirk was on his face. What's with that look? His grin only got bigger. I left a gift for the Uchiha. I may have snuck in and planted a few additions to his house. After these 2 years gone I had thought the security around this place would have gotten better, but it's still the same as I remember it. Since I am not wearing orange anymore I have become pretty much undetectable. Selena raised an eyebrow at him but paid close attention to the large compound he had pointed out and watched as Sasuke walked into the compound and into his home. As soon as he went in a loud explosion suddenly went off. However, instead of your normal fire and smoke bombs, instead it was an enormous paint bomb that was so loud the whole village most likely had heard it. The windows were all covered with red and blue paint, while out of one of the chimneys on the top of the roof, green paint was oozing out. Sakura, who had been trying to follow Sasuke inside, had been hit with brown paint, so it looked like she had a very unfortunate accident. The front door slammed open and out came Sasuke, who was covered head to toe in paint to the point that his hair looked like a spiky colored rainbow. He was scowling so much and swearing so much that Naruto was having a hard time keeping his laughter in. Selena stood next to him and while she found it funny, she had to shake her head at her boyfriend's antics. Sometimes I worry about him. I wonder if they mixed his claiming up, since his pranking skills are more like a child of Hermes. She thought as Naruto grabbed her hand while still laughing. Come on, I can sense Shinobi heading towards them. We best leave now. He said as she nodded. Naruto took one last look back and saw Sakura trying to calm Sasuke down, while Sasuke was still throwing a fit and cursing whoever did that prank. It was then that Sasuke looked up in Naruto's general direction and met Naruto's eye line. When he did, Naruto stared right back with his eyes shining and glowing a little while a fox-like grin appeared on his face. When it did, Sasuke's eyes widened a little before they went murderous with rage. Come on, let's go before he blows a fuse. He said as he held onto Selena's hand tight before he made a hand sign and poofed away in a cloud of smoke, taking Selena along with him, leaving the scream sounds of Sasuke cursing Naruto's name. But Naruto and Selena reappeared on Mount Myoboku and immediately started to make their way toward Fukasaku and Shima's home. As they walked there, the toads that varied of all sized either greeted the pair or gave them both a nod hello. Since their arrival there 6 months ago, all of the toads quickly took a shine to Naruto and Selena and most immediately saw the similarities between Naruto and his parents. They saw how familiar his personality had become, more like Minato's, but had a similar aura around him like Artemis did. One that just shouted out a bond or familiarity with nature. The toads were even very welcoming towards Selena, who was a little nervous to be around enormous toads at first, but eventually got used to the company and struck up friendship with various members of the toads community. Though she might not have been a summoner, they welcomed her happily since she was tied to Naruto in a way, and it was similar to what Minato had done with Artemis all those years ago. She had quickly struck up a strong friendship with Gamatotsu just like Naruto had with Gamakichi. The first time she saw him and met him and saw how childlike he was, she couldn't help but feel a little drawn to him and want to mother him. Of course, this led to Gamatotsu happily calling her big sis, much to everyone's amusement and her delight. The other was the giant toad Gamakin, after she was trying to climb one of the giant lily pads that went high in the sky with weights on, but had lost her grip and had began to fall down. As she began to fall, a large long tongue had grabbed her as she was falling and put her to safety. The tongue had belonged to Gamakin, who told her she was a little clumsy like he was. The two struck up a conversation and became friends ever since. Aside from them, she thought that Gamabunta was a big grouch who drank way too much sake. In a way, she thought Gamabunta was the toad version of Dionysus. Naruto had laughed and told her not to tell Mr. D that since he would probably turn her into one just as a way of getting back at her. After a few more minutes they eventually arrived at Ma and Pa's house and saw the chimney puffing smoke out of it. It immediately made both Naruto and Selena go a little green. Though they were grateful at how motherly Ma had been around them and treated them, when it came to her cooking they wanted to run for the hills. Neither enjoyed having to eat insects for breakfast, lunch and dinner almost every day. The first time Selena saw what she might have to eat for the rest of their time at Mount Myoboku, she gave a look to Naruto telling him to take her home. Though later and they were eternally grateful to Pa as he revealed they had stocked up on food for Naruto and Selena to eat since he knew full well what his wife's cooking was like and he did not envy anyone who was not a toad that had to eat it. They neared the home of Fukasaku and Shima and both noticed Fukasaku was waiting outside for them with a patient look on his face. As they got closer the old toad looked in their direction and smiled as they got closer. "Naruto, Selena, it's good that you have come. We have a guest joining us," he said, making both demigods' eyes shift up a little, wondering who would be visiting them since this was a first for the entire duration of their stay. Seeing their confused looks, Fukasaku showed them inside with both following quickly after. Once inside, Naruto's mouth grew into a bright smile as he saw his grandmother Hestia sitting at the table sipping on some tea, having a small conversation with Shima. Hestia saw them come in and smiled warmly at Naruto before getting up and making her way over towards him. "Grandma," he said as he engulfed her in a tight hug, making Hestia laugh a little at how childlike her grandson was when he was around her. "Oh, I have missed you while you have been away. The camp is not the same anymore without you there," she said before putting him out in front of her, looking at the little changes on him. His hair was a little shorter but was as spiky as ever and he had very little baby fat anymore. Now that he was 16 he was becoming a full adult and she already knew he was going to be a very handsome young man. He had grown again and was now around 5'10" and she knew he would be growing taller within the next few years. She then turned her head and saw Selena shuffling a little in her spot since this was the first time she was properly meeting her boyfriend's grandmother. "And you must be the one that has gained my grandson's heart," she said as Selena nodded a little. "It is nice to meet you, Lady Hestia," she said as she bowed. But Hestia just laughed at the action. "My dear, there is no need to bow to me. I am not one for formalities," she said as she brought Selena in for a hug. Selena was surprised by the action but quickly returned it. When she did, she heard the hearth goddess whisper into her ear. "Thank you for being with him through this rough time. I know he could have used your support in these last few months." Selena, though surprised at first, exited the hug and gave a small smile to Hestia. "It was my pleasure." From the side, Naruto was smiling at their interaction, happy that Selena and Hestia seemed to like each other and were getting along. Though he had no doubt about it, it still worried him since he wanted Hestia to like her. "Gran, not that I don't love you being here, but why are you here?" he asked since Hestia had picked an interesting time to finally visit. He was surprised that it was during the last few days of him being on Mount Myoboku, but his gut was telling him there was another reason. Hestia smiled. "Your observation skills are still growing, I see," she said before they all sat around a table and turned her attention to the old green toad. "Fukasaku, first I would like to ask where Naruto is in his sage training," she asked as Fukasaku had a thinking look on his face and took a moment before answering. "Well, he has shown great promise and had mastered Senjutsu well and very quickly, I might add. While we are still tinkering with a few little bits like how long he can last in said state, I would say he is just about finished his training. We are now just refining the edges now, so to speak." Hestia nodded and looked at Naruto with pride. "That is good. Very good. If that is the case, then it means now would be the best time to bring you back. Things at home are beginning to elevate, so to speak, and we will need Naruto more than ever." Hearing her tone, Naruto and Selena knew things back home were beginning to get worse than they had left it and wondered if Luke or Kronos had made a move against the Camp or Olympus yet. "What's been happening back home, Gran?" Hestia took a breath before she began to speak as the others leaned in. "Things have not been good, Naruto, not in the slightest. While no battles have occurred yet, the enemy's forces are beginning to build and get to a monstrous level. Over the last few months, monsters have been sighted together and not on their own like they normally would be, all gathering in secluded areas away from town and cities. Your mother and her hunters have been in multiple small-scale battles, and while there have been no deaths yet from the hunters, it is also beginning to take its toll on them, and they are getting slower and pushed back more so than ever before. It's only a matter of time until the hunters begin to dwindle. And what's worse is that Zeus is still claiming ignorance and saying that Kronos is not rising, and that is just some small-scale uprising from the monsters and a couple of demigods. Myself and others have tried to point out to him that Kronos is rising, but he just refuses to believe it. Hervey King is still a stubborn old goat then," Naruto said while Selena smiled at the jab while Hestia laughed. "Yes, well, like Mother Ray says, he did take after his father in that aspect," she said before patting him on the cheek. "By the way, Mother Ray says thank you and that she will want to visit very soon. She enjoys being visited by Demeter and Poseidon and she has you to thank for that, and I know she wanted to hug you to death." Naruto blushed a little but shrugged. "I just didn't want her to be lonely anymore and she deserves her own happiness just like everyone else does." Hestia hummed before getting back to where she was. Also, we have begun noticing a fair amount of the minor gods, spending very long absences from Olympus and acting suspicious. We are beginning to fear that some of the minor gods and goddess will be turning their back on us, not that I can blame them if I am honest. Naruto and Selena looked a little confused, so Hestia elaborated. The minor gods are constantly looked down upon by some of the Olympians, Zeus, Hera, Ares, Aphrodite, Dionysus, Apollo, and I know they are beginning to get frustrated at how we treat them. They are sometimes threatened to do the bidding of an Olympian god, and a few of the Olympians use their status as a god to have certain pleasures given to them. Plus their children don't get homes like the children of Olympus get. They don't get cabins and end up being pushed into the Hermes cabin. That's why it's always so full. Why the Hermes cabin is so overcrowded. Yes, and like the parents, the children of the minor gods are the ones that have mostly turned to the side of Kronos and the other titans. If the other titans begin getting involved, then we really will start having problems. Some that were friend and allies in the previous Titan War could easily turn on us. Naruto nodded a little sympathetically, while Selena winced a little at hearing her mother's name. But both felt a little angry since the minor gods did not deserve to be treated with such disrespect. They followed the rules like they should, and they have never been much of a problem, other than Kian back at Christmas, but that had been a one-off. Do you have any idea which ones yet? Naruto asked, but Hestia shook her head. Not yet, though I have a few in mind who have been acting a little odd lately, but I don't want to press them until I am sure of it. Which then leads to why I am here. She said. Since your training is mostly over, I believe it's time for you to return. I can see you will not help the Leaf, and for that I will not blame you. The Leaf has done you no favors, and therefore you should not have to owe them anything. I know, but even though my mind is made up, I have a few friends there that I don't want to get hurt. And then there's Ino's dad, and I don't want her to lose her father because I chose not to do anything. Hestia smiled at her grandson. That's very admirable, and your heart is as pure and as strong as always, I see. Do not worry. I already have a plan to deal with that. She said. Everyone looked surprised by Hestia just gave them a look saying to them, do not ask, because I will not tell. Everyone fell silent for a moment before Naruto got up. Then I guess we should get packing. When will we leave? In 10 minutes. Hestia said, surprising them all, but Hestia quickly explained. Back home, your friends Percy Jackson, Annabeth Chase, Thalia Grace and Grover Underwood were sent to retrieve 2 demigods in Maine. I have a feeling things are not going to go as planned due to a bit of information I required, and I think it would be best that if you both return and join them in Maine. Both Naruto and Selena nodded since both were anxious to see everyone again, since the surprise that they were staying in the elemental nations for 6 months had hit a few of their friends pretty hard. Clarice, since they were her 2 best friends, and Annabeth, since she looked up to Naruto like a little sister looks up to her big brother. Right, in that case we will be as quick about it as we can. Naruto said as Selena got up and went after him. As they left, neither saw the smile on Hestia's face, which gained the attention of Fukasaku and Shima. What is with the devious smile, Lady Hestia? They both asked with slightly raised eyebrows, since it's made shivers go down their spine before it morphed into a warm smile as her eyes had a faraway look in them. Nothing, it's just Naruto will be getting a very nice surprise when he arrived in Maine. A surprise he has been waiting for more than 16 years. She said as both toads now understood what she meant. They hoped Naruto would be ready for the meeting of a lifetime. Maine? Who are you people and what is that? A tanned girl with long black hair and a scruffy green hat called out as she stood in front of her little brother, who looked physically similar to her as Percy and Annabeth stood in front of them, with Percy having riptide drawn out and Annabeth with her 2 bronze knives in her hands. Both demigods looks a little taller than before and a little more mature. Percy had grown a little with his hair now shorter than how it normally was, and his body was slightly more muscled than before. Annabeth's biggest change was that physically she looked in better shape than she was 6 months ago, with her arms and legs showing off her now light but lean muscles from the training Naruto had set up for her, and it had proved that it had done wonders for her. From behind the tanned girl, the younger boy looks in wonder at the figure in front of them. It's a manticore. He's got 3000 attack power and +5 to saving throws. The 2 demigods looked at him in confusion while the girl face palmed. Nico, this is not the time for your card game. But Bianca, it's just like my game. He said before everyone heard a war cry and saw Thalia engage the monster in front of them as she charged at it with her spear and shield activated. The monster in front of them looked like a lion's body and had a long, scorpion-like tail with small scales on its back which acted like armored plating. Its face meanwhile looked aged like a man in his early 40s with a bit of grey hair on his head. Thalia jabbed at his head, but he snarled and swatted the spear aside. Its claws raked against the side of her shield aegis, and sparks shot off from the claws meeting metal. Grover was off to the side trying not to panic and was using his wild magic to create weeds to tangle the manticore's feet, but it was doing little success as the manticore easily ripped them away. "You will have to better than that, little demigod. The manticore drive," Thorn said as he pushed Thalia away and into the snow-covered grass. Percy and Annabeth looked ready to get involved and were about to go forward, but from behind them the sound of a helicopter appeared, making them both turn around and go a little wide-eyed. The helicopter was fully decked out with machine guns on the side, and from beneath the helicopter, a large searchlight was attached. The searchlights turned on and shot towards the small fight between Thalia and Dr. Thorn. The searchlights blinded Thalia, and the manticore swatted her away with its tail. Her shield flew off into the snow. Her spear flew in the other direction. "No," Percy said as he ran out to help her. He parried away a spike just before it would have hit her chest. Dr. Thorn laughed. "Now do you see how hopeless it is? Yield, little heroes, and perhaps I will spare you if I feel merciful." The group were trapped between a monster and a fully armed helicopter, and they realized that they had no chance. Two Cyclops also appeared behind Dr. Thorn, making things even worse than before. Then when the group thought things were over and Bianca and Nico hugged each other tightly, they heard a clear piercing sound. The call of a hunting horn blowing in the woods. Percy looks around to see where it came from, but noticed that Dr. Thorn had a panicked look on his face before it contorted into a look of annoyance. His head then turned and faced the forest to their side. When he did, so did the others, while Annabeth scowled a little, obviously knowing who was coming. From out of the forest multiple figures dressed in silver parka jackets, all equipped with bow and quivers, came out. When Percy got a good look, he noticed all of the figures coming out of the woods were girls, all varying from the age of 10 and 16, all wearing the same clothes, and all with the same hateful and steeled looks on their faces. "Great, just what we needed," Annabeth muttered as Percy looked at her. "You know them?" She nodded. "The hunters of Artemis, the ones led by Artemis, Naruto's mother." As she spoke, a silver arrow flew through the air and hit Dr. Thorn right in the shoulder, making him take a few steps back and let out a curse of pain. He then grabbed the arrow and yanked it out. One of the older archers stepped forward with her bow drawn. She was tall and graceful with coppery-colored skin. Unlike the other girls, Percy noticed she had a silver circlet braided into the top of her long dark hair, so she looked like some kind of Persian princess. "Permission to kill, my lady?" she asked as Artemis strolled out, very relaxed in her 12-year-old form. She looked towards the manticore and scat in disdain. My, to what do I owe the pleasure of meeting with Olympus's Girl Scouts? Here to sell me cookies, are you?" Dr. Thorn asked as all the girls glared at the hunters, and when some of them shouted curse words at him, he just laughed. "I am here to hunt monsters, something you clearly are, manticore," she said coolly before she looked at helicopter and waved her hand in front of it. It disappeared into a flock of birds and all flew away. She then nodded to Zoe, who stood next to her. "Permission granted, Zoe." "I would not be too sure just yet," he said tauntingly before his long tail suddenly wrapped around Thalia and held her in the air in front of him. "Thalia," Annabeth called out as Percy grabbed her from getting too close. Percy was trying to calm Annabeth down so they could come up with a way to save Thalia, but to the half-blood's surprise the hunters did not lower their bows and instead pulled back on the strings. "They're still going to fire," they all thought before to their shock the hunters still fired their silver arrows towards the manticore. Dr. Thorn too looked surprised at the action, thinking they would not dare hurt him, well he had a girl hostage, since it was common knowledge the hunters thought women were the greatest thing in the world. He guessed the hunters had become a lot colder during their many years in service to Olympus. The silver arrows all neared their target, but just before they could hit and as Annabeth, Grover and Percy shouted out for them to stop, a new wave of black arrows suddenly appeared from the side and embedded themselves in the silver arrows, halting them in their tracks. An eerie silence rang out through the giant field as the demigods all looked surprised at what just happened, while the hunters all looked murderous. "Who dares stop our arrows? Who dares interrupt our hunt?" Zoe called out angrily as she and the other girls all grabbed another arrow and looked ready to fire another one off. Dr. Thorn chuckled before he motioned for the two Cyclops from behind him to move forward and protect him while he attempted to try and escape with his new hostage. However, before he could, a sound rang out through the field. Everyone listened in and heard what sounded like twirling. Like something was twirling through the wind, and it was only serving to get louder and louder every second. "What is that?" Bianca asked as they all looked to see where it was coming from. But before anyone else could answer, trees from the forest suddenly burst open and as quick as lightning a large spinning object sped out of the forest and struck the two Cyclops and beheaded both of the two giant monsters, causing them to drop to the earth and fade away into gold dust. When they dropped, everyone looked gobsmacked at what just happened and Dr. Thorn looked panicked. When the object stopped, it embedded itself on a large tree trunk, now showing everyone that the object was a large sword that looked like a butcher's knife. All the hunters looked at it in a little fear. Annabeth, Percy, Grover and the bound Thalia looked at it in surprise before they recognized it. "Is that the Kubikaribacha?" Annabeth said, though she and the others noticed that the sword had changed a little. The handle had a bronze handle, and one side was now made and coated in celestial bronze, looking similar and like a larger version of Luke's sword. "Does that mean?" Grover started before everyone locked onto Dr. Thorne, who was now sprinting away as fast as he could. The hunters and demigods looked ready to chase after him, but instead as he neared the cliff, two figures appeared in front of him. When they dropped, the demigods and Satyr all had the brightest, happiest look on their faces, while the hunters looked a little stunned by the sudden arrival. While Artemis looked in between the motions of shocked and happiness. Naruto and Selena stood there proudly blocking the way, both with serious looks on their face and both looking in better shape than they had ever seen them and wore clothes to match. Naruto wore a simple navy blue t-shirt that showed off his muscular body and a few seals on his wrists. He wore black bottoms and combat boots, and on his hands were black fingerless gloves. However, the most noticeable clothing was the black headband on his forehead that looked exactly like a shinobi forehead protector, but engraved on the metal was now the symbol for Camp Half-Blood. Plus draped over him was a long red cloak that opened at the front and stopped at his hips and was dark red with black flames flickering the bottom. But Selena, she had a padded grey top that was sleeveless with a black skirt that stopped a little above the knees and combat-heeled boots that went up to her knees. On her skirt she had a bandana just like Naruto tied around her waist. On her thighs she had various knives strapped to them, while on her back she had her bow and quiver strapped on. Like Naruto, she wore a cloak jacket, but the colors were instead a grayish silver with hot pink flames at the bottom. All the demigods looked at them and thought they were completely badass, and Percy and Grover wanted to know where to get one. Dr. Thorne looked surprised and went to turn the other way, but from behind him, Gamakichi suddenly dropped in, smirking at the monster. "You're not going anywhere, buddy," he said as he crossed his arms while ignoring the hunter's surprised look at the large talking toad. Dr. Thorne suddenly looked conflicted, so he chose what he thought would be the easier option and charged forward towards Naruto and Selena. However, before he could get past them, which he thought he would do with his great speed, he was surprised to see Naruto take a step forward and with a single swing, brought his glove-covered fist into the stomach of the manticore. When he did, everyone other than the two demigods looked stunned when Dr. Thorne shook for a moment before he dropped to his knees, clutching his stomach and vomited the contents of his stomach. "You're him," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're her brat. The one that monsters are all beginning to fear. The one that took down the Kraken. So you've heard of me?" Naruto said in a polite tone. "That's good, I guess. Though I am not really sure about the title. I mean, Legend Slayer sounds a little much, to be honest. Maybe she is the one you should worry about. I mean, she is the one that going to send you to the underworld." "What?" Dr. Thorne asked before sharp pain entered his mouth and caused black blood to pour out of it. He looked up to see Selena looking at him coldly with a dagger in her hands, with said dagger impaled through his mouth. "The moment you harmed my friends, your life was forfeit," she said before she took the dagger out and to everyone's surprise grabbed his human-shaped head and with great strength that surprised everyone snapped it with an audible crunching sound ringing out. Dr. Thorne dropped to the ground immediately and began to disappear into gold dust. Thalia, who was still wrapped in his tail, yelped when since she was still in the air and with the tail gone, she fell to the ground but found herself caught in the arms of an amused-looking Naruto. "Hey Thals, been a while," he said, making her roll her eyes but smile up at him nonetheless. "Nice of you to finally join us, Uzumaki. We were wondering when you two were going to get back," she said as Naruto put her back on her feet. "Naruto?" he heard as he looked forward to see Annabeth sprinting towards him before she jumped into him and wrapped her arms around his neck. He smiled as he spun her around a little, making her laugh and squeal a little before he placed her back down on the ground. "I have missed you, Peethy," he said as Annabeth gave him a family kiss on the cheek. "Missed you too, fish cake," she said quietly, making him roll his eyes before he greeted Percy, who was now beside him, and gave his friend a manly one-armed hug. He spotted Grover a little distance away with a boy and a girl who looked like siblings and who he thought he recognized. Before he could get a closer look, he finally noticed the hunters standing there as they headed towards them, some looking at Naruto with emotionless looks and others looking at Selena in slight awe. Naruto had not paid much attention to them beforehand, but now as he looked at them and he saw what they were wearing, his eyes went a little wide. "Are they the hunters of Artemis?" Annabeth said, knowing the moment Naruto had waited for was close to finally happening, and she saw him shake a little. So did Selena as she went next to him and took his hand into hers, wanting to be there for support. As she said that, they all saw an auburn-haired girl step forward who looked about 12 and saw her look towards Naruto. They all covered their eyes a little when she was engulfed in a bright light and changed into a woman in her early 20s. She looked towards Naruto and after a moment of silence a warm, loving smile appeared on her face. "Hello, Naruto," she whispered to him as she walked and stood in front of Naruto. Naruto's throat tightened a little as he looked towards the woman he had waited so long to finally meet. Hi mom. Chapter 1 completed. Chapter 2. Long-awaited reunion. Naruto stood there with a dumbfounded look on his face as the entire field was completely silent of anyone speaking as everyone's eyes laid upon him and the goddess in front of him, who was still looking at him with an ever-curious smile on her face. This is my mom. He thought to himself as he looked her over. She was actually kind of what he imagined she looked like, at least what he had managed to piece together from what other people had told him about her, the various fiction images like the mythologic card he got of her, and the various statues he had seen in the museums. Her hair was long but curled at the bottom, her silver eyes were in between a silver color and a yellowy silver that looked exactly like the moon. Though he understood what people meant that he looked like his father, seeing his mother now he could see the resemblances with her now and what he had inherited from her. She was very beautiful, more so than he ever imagined and just had this aura of natural beauty about her. Like she didn't have to try to look that way, it just kind of happened. From behind her he noticed all the hunters looking at him and noticed they were either looking at him in envy or with annoyance. He guessed they had not really accepted him yet. He was about to go forward and hug her for the first time ever, but like a killjoy that he is, Grover just had to interrupt the moment. He gasped, then knelt hastily in the snow and started yammering, "Thank you Lady Artemis. You're so wow." The hunters looked at him with a raised eyebrow, while the demigods all face-palmed, since it was common knowledge how infatuated satyrs and other nature spirits were with Artemis. Heck, a lot of the time they followed Naruto around since he was her son. "Get up goat boy, now is not the time to go all fan crazy," Thalia said as she bopped him on the head making him wince in pain. As he stood up a quiet voice spoke up from behind them. They all turned around to show Bianca and Nico standing there both completely confused at what was going on. "What the heck is going on? Who are you people and what did we just see?" she said pointing back to where the small battle happened. Nico meanwhile stepped forward and looked at Naruto. Bianca saw what her brother was doing and did the same, since they both could feel they knew him from somewhere. Naruto did the same and walked up and looked at them curiously. Everyone else looked at them oddly wondering what in the world they were doing before Nico's eyes widened and pointed at Naruto. "You're that Raymond guy from the casino," he said just as Naruto did the same. "You're those kids from the casino. Do you guys know each other?" Annabeth asked stepping forward looking at them both strangely. "Yeah, this is Nico and Bianca D'Angelo. I met them back on the quest for Zeus's lightning bolt. I met them while we were in Vegas and I introduced Nico to the wonders of Raymond." "Raymond?" Nico called out as he and Naruto fist pumped the air as their demigods friends sighed and shook their heads. From beside them they all noticed Bianca was looking at Naruto with a blush as she now remembered where she had met the blonde and many noticed the pink tinge on her cheeks and how she was twiddling her fingers in slight nerves. Selena raised an eyebrow at that, but she let it go since Bianca would not be the last person to have a crush on her boyfriend. The hunters meanwhile eyed Naruto with a slight glare, thinking he did something unjustly to gain her affections. Bianca then shook her head out of the moment. "You still have not answered what just happened. I want to know what we just saw since what we saw should not have been possible." From the hunter's line Zo walked forward and got closer to Bianca while she bumped Naruto out of the way, making him go to the side with Nico still beside him. He looked at Zo with an odd expression while the other demigods looked at her in annoyance, though the hunters were smiling at their lieutenant. Artemis sighed at her lieutenant's actions thought since she knew how difficult she could be when she wanted. "The better question is you asking who you and your brother are," she said, though she said brother a little disdain making Nico shrink in his spot, though a pat on the shoulder from Naruto perked him right up again. "Our parents are dead," Bianca said. "We're orphans. There's a bank trust that pays for our school," but she stopped when she saw most of the faces looking at her did not believe her. "I'm telling the truth," she said incredulously before looking away and shuffled back over to where her brother and Naruto was standing much to the demigod's amusement and the hunter's annoyance. "Bianca, what she is trying to say to you is that you and Nico are not like other people. You are special in the way that you are both recognized as half-bloods. One of your parents was a mortal, while the other was most likely an Olympian god." "What? Gods? Olympian gods aren't real, those are just myths, stories," she said as thunder boomed over the sky, making many wince a little. "It's best not to say that, the big guy in the sky does not really like it when people say they don't exist. He a little broody," he said whispering the last part as Bianca and Nico nodded dumbly. "Cool," Nico said smiling that very thought while Bianca tapped him on the head. "No, this is not cool Nico," she said though Nico was in his own little world spouting nonsense about gods and mythamagic. "Does Zeus really have lightning bolts that do 600 damage? Does he get extra movement points for?" "Nico, this is not the time for your stupid game," she said while Naruto looked at him. "You still play mythamagic?" "Of course, it's the best game ever," he said, pointing to his pocket which had all his card in. Thalia then walked up to them and placed her hands on Bianca's shoulders and gave them a reassuring squeeze. "Bianca, I know it's hard to believe. But the gods are still around. Trust me. They're immortal. And whenever they have kids with regular humans, kids like us, well, our lives are dangerous. If they're so real, then who is your godly parents?" she said, looking to Naruto with an incredulously look on her face. Naruto stumbled a little and went a little red, making his friends laugh. She is kind of standing over there," he said, pointing over towards Artemis, who had an amused look on her face, which only made Bianca have her eyes widen. "So she is," as she started, but everyone nodded in confirmation as the black-haired girl gulped a little. She then looked over at Artemis with an apologetic look. "I'm sorry, miss. I hope I did not offend you." Artemis raised her hand. "It is fine, young one. You are confused and it is to be expected that you do not believe of our existence at first. But do know that with the existence of the gods, it also means that the old myths and legend you have been told about us are true." "So that Dr. Thorn guy was really a manticore?" Naiko asked as Artemis idled her head to look at him. She did not answer, but she did give a small nod to confirm what he said. "Whoa," he said, his amazement as he looked like a kid you just woke up on Christmas morning. Grover then took his fake legs off to show everything they were telling was the truth. It only led to Naiko getting more excited and Bianca looked like she was about to have a panic attack. "Grover, put your legs back on," Thalia said. "You're freaking her out." It was then that Percy walked forward with Annabeth beside him, trying to give Bianca reassurance. "Bianca," Percy said, "we came here to help you. You and Naiko need training to survive. Dr. Thorn won't be the last monster you meet. You need to come to camp." "Camp?" she asked a little hesitantly as Naiko's ear perked up. "Camp Half-Blood," he said. "It's where half-bloods learn to survive and stuff. You can join us, stay there year-round if you like." "That sounds awesome," Naiko yelled, clearly showing the half-bloods that Naiko was defiantly in. They looked at Bianca, who looked at Naruto. "Would you be there?" she asked quietly. "I'd prefer to go somewhere with someone I actually know," she said as Naruto nodded. "Yeah, I will be there and I am sure you will meet and make tons of new friends. You won't have to be on your own anymore with Naiko. We can all pitch in and help with him. At camp your responsibilities will be lessened and you will be able to relax more as well as learn to defend yourself." Bianca nodded and looked fond of the idea, but Zoe stepped forward. "There is another option for her instead of that camp," she said as Thalia glared at her and was about to walk up to her, but Selena beat her to it. "True, there are the hunters, but unlike you she is clearly not a man-hater," she said as Zoe snorted at her. "Yes, well, all you Aphrodite children are well-known man-lovers. After all, you and your siblings spread your legs for most just like your mother. At least with you one of her kids have views," Zoe said as the hunter all agreed with her statement and Artemis could feel a headache coming along. "You leave my mother out of this, and just for the record, why would I want to do that when I have a boyfriend who loves me, and while my siblings may be a little soft, it does not make them useless. It's more than would you have, bitch," Selena said as Zoe looked ready to blow as her fingers traced along her hunting knives while Selena did the same with her dagger. Before anything could happen, Naruto stepped forward and got in the middle of them to stop them from duking it out. "The last thing we need is you two to start fighting, and if you have not noticed, this is Bianca's choice on where she wants to go. Don't you think we should ask her what she wants to go since it's her decision? Let my mom explain it to her, I am sure she could be better at explaining the pros and cons than we will be," he said. He looked over to Artemis, who gave him a small nod and a grateful smile at diffusing the situation. Zoe eyed him curiously before turning away. "Very well, I can agree to that. As can I," Selena said as she wrapped one of her arms though one of Naruto's. Zoe stood back in line but glared at both Thalia and Selena, who happily glared back at her. "We've burdened these children enough," Artemis announced as she tried to get everything back into order. "Zoe, we will rest here for a few hours. Raise the tents. Treat the wounded. Retrieve our guests' belongings from the school." Zoe nodded and began to walk away with the other hunters. "Yes, my lady. The uncle, like my son said, I will explain it to you. Come with me and we will have a small chat." Bianca nodded and went with Artemis whilst Naruto looked on. He knew his mother had her duties, and while he was glad she looked happy to see him, he hoped at some point they could actually have a talk. "You okay?" Selena asked Naruto as she saw him look towards Artemis and Bianca with a faraway look on his face. "I'm fine." He gulped and he swept his hand through his hair. "It's just weird to think that I am actually looking at her after all this time. It's not how I imagined we would meet for the first time, but I can live with it. Well, I am sure you two will have a sit down at some point during the evening, since she looks eager to speak to you. Just have to be a little patient," she said as she leaned into him. "I guess," he said before he felt another hand grab him and lead him towards the camp. Annabeth was dragging him away whilst having a happy look on her face. Come on, you need to tell me everything you did back at Mount Myoboku. I want all the details. She said as Naruto sighed but had a feeling she would be asking. Percy, Thalia, Nico, Grover and Selena followed after them as Thalia wanted to see just how strong Naruto and Selena had become in their time away. But Artemis and Bianca. This is far enough. Artemis said as she stopped beside the other side of the field, away from prying eyes and ears, as Bianca stopped and shuffled where she was standing. You need not be afraid of me, young one. I will not harm you unless you give me reason to. She said. Sorry, it's just I never imagined I would actually be talking to a real-life goddess. Bianca said as she swept away a strand of hair. It's fine, I understand today has been long and stressful for you and your brother, so I will keep this explanation short so we can quickly go to my camp. Though your brother only has the choice to go to Camp Half-Blood, you on the other hand have a second choice. That choice being you can join my hunters and will travel with us through the world, go on adventures and be free of responsibilities. You will gain eternal youth and will live for many decades, centuries, perhaps even longer. You will be shown how to defend yourself and how to take care of yourself without the aid of men. Bianca nodded and she had to admit it did sound amazing, but a little too good to be true, like there had to be some kind of catch. But there is a catch, isn't there? She said as Artemis nodded. One of the requirements is that it is generally needed for a huntress to renounce men altogether and see women as the superior gender. Also, you would have to swear off romantic love for the rest of your life. Once you are in the hunters, it will be very difficult to leave, and breaking the rules that are set in place is reprimanded greatly. So I would not see Nico again? She asked since it did not sit well with her having to just leave suddenly and leave Nico all alone. Artemis shook her head. You would see him on the rare occasions that we visit Camp Half-Blood, but otherwise no, you would not see or contact him. She said, and immediately the goddess could see the afflicted look on Bianca's face, and something inside of her already told her what the answer would be. Leave Nico behind. I couldn't just abandon him like that. I'm his only family. She thought. Plus Naruto said we would make tons of new friends at camp and that it would become a nice new home for us. Somewhere we will be safe and looked after. They stood there for a moment in silence as Artemis waited for her answer. Thank you for the offer, but I will have to say no to joining the hunters. I can't just abandon Nico like that. It wouldn't be fair on him. She said as Artemis sighed and nodded. Very well. It is very loyal of you to stick with family than your own wants, something I value greatly. While I may not be pleased with the decision, I will respect it and I will tell the other girls to respect your decision. Thank you. Bianca said as they began walking back to the camp. As they walked, Bianca inadvertently blurted out what was on her mind, which gained Artemis's attention. How are you leader of a group of eternal maidens when you are not one yourself? She asked before she placed her hand over her mouth in shock at what she just said. Artemis raised an eyebrow at her. Bianca scolded herself for asking such a question, but she couldn't help it. Her curiosity was getting the better of her. Artemis was known as the maiden goddess, and yet here she was with a son. That is an interesting question, and one not many have dared to ask me. But I commend you for your honesty for asking. However, it is best I speak with my son first, since he will be wanting similar answers. Wait, you mean this is the first time he is meeting you? She asked, surprised that she was part of one of Naruto's big life events, though Artemis did not answer and they walked the rest of the way in silence. But demigods. Naruto sat beside Selena as Selena spoke with Annabeth and Thalia about her time on Mount Myoboku and how about her 6-month-long training period with Shima and the Toads. Percy and Grover were sitting with Nico as the younger boy was showing them his mythamagic cards as well as asking them all kinds of questions about the camp and the gods. So there is a cabin for each god or goddess? Nico asked as Percy nodded. 12 cabins for the children of the 12 Olympians. Then the unclaimed go to the Hermes cabin since Hermes is happy to let those that have not been claimed stay in his cabin with his children, which is where you will go at first until hopefully your parent claims you. Usually it's pretty crowded in there, but lately a lot of space opened up in it and now there are a few bunks and beds free, plus Connor and Travis, who are the heads of the cabin, are good friends of ours and will take good care of you. Grover pitched. Though watch out since they tended to be a couple of pranksters. Percy added, and Nico nodded, getting more and more excited about it. As they all talked, the tent flap opened up to see Bianca walking in towards them, and many smiled when they knew her presence here meant she had chosen not to join the hunters. The girls all welcomed her, and as the boys gave her a nod and wave, immediately putting nerves, Bianca had to rest, letting her know internally that she made the right choice. Now we have another girl for the group. Annabeth said as she and Thalia put their arms around Bianca to help her feel included. It worked since the tan girl smiled at them. As they spoke, Naruto took off his jacket, revealing his well-muscled arms, making the girls all blush a little, while Selena smirked. Though when he did, it also gained the attention of everyone. Naruto, is that a tattoo? Annabeth asked as she took right arm and looked on his upper arm as did everyone else as Naruto just smiled at them. The tattoo was of a Greek shield with a Greek helmet in the center of it, with a sword going diagonally down one side and a spear going down the other. At the bottom was a horizontal bow, and then on each side was a word around the shield with a Greek word for family right at the top and the words honor, duty and respect down the other. Wow, that is such a badass tattoo. Thalia said as Percy quickly agreed with them as did Nico and Bianca. Yeah, I thought the same when I got it. Naruto said as Annabeth looked at him quizzically. Where did you get it? The toads let us go out into a few towns from time to time to relax and we found a tattoo place. I had an idea for a tattoo and Selena and I decided to get the tattoo. They looked at Selena and she took off her left boot and showed them her foot. Just above her ankle was the same tattoo. It's official. I need to get that tattoo. Thalia said as a few of the others all nodded as Naruto and Selena nodded their heads. It is a pretty awesome tattoo. They both said before Selena leaned over and kissed him on the cheek before putting her boot back on. No doubt Clarice will probably want to get one too. I think that much is a given. He said just as the tent flap went open and Zoe Nightshade walked in scowling as she did. She glanced at Bianca with a disappointed look on her face before she looked at Naruto, Percy, and Bianca. My mistress would like to see you, so get up and start moving. She said before she stormed out. She's a ray of sunshine. Thalia said as the three got up and followed after Zoe. They trekked through the hunter's campsite with Naruto now wearing his jacket again but with the sleeves a little rolled up. As they walked they saw the hunters just sort of stared at them as if trying to figure them out, Naruto mostly. When they looked at Bianca it was looks of disappointment whilst Percy ended up just getting glares. They don't look too pleased to see us, do they? Percy whispered to Naruto, who just shrugged. They are technically man-haters, so it's to be expected. Yeah, but you think they would cut you some slack at least since Artemis is your mom. I guess, but to be honest I was never expecting much from them anyway. One of the two I met on the Light Bolt quest was rather antagonistic towards me. Before they could continue to speak they ended up at the main tent where Artemis was currently residing in. Zoe motioned for them to follow as she went inside and they quickly followed after them. The inside of tent was warm with multiple furs decorating the room. Silk rugs and pillows covered the floor. In the center, a golden brazier of fire seemed to burn without fuel or smoke. Behind the goddess, on a polished oak display stand, was her huge silver bow, carved to resemble gazelle horns. Artemis was sitting on a wooden throne with a large deer with its head happily lying on her lap, and said goddess was still in her adult form. Zoe walked towards her and stood next to her throne with her ever-serious look on her face. The three demigods took a seat on some cushions that were laid out in front of her and began making themselves comfortable. You must forgive my hunters if they do not welcome you. Artemis said as she looked at Percy before looking a little sadly at Naruto. It is very rare that we would have boys in this camp. Boys are usually forbidden to have any contact with the hunters. The last one to see this camp, she looked at Zoe. Which one was it? That boy in Colorado. Zoe said. You turned him into a jackalope. Ah, yes. Artemis nodded, satisfied. What happened to him? Naruto blurted out, getting everyone's attention. To the boy that was turned into a jackalope. Was he turned back or was he left like that? He was left like that, pity since we could not hunt him. He interrupted our hunt with that loud mouth of his. Zoe Tilda said before Artemis could speak. Naruto raised his eyebrow at the copper-skinned girl before he looked towards his mother. Please turn him back. Excuse me? Artemis said, a little surprised as Percy and Bianca looked at him in shock while Zoe Tilda looked at him angrily. If that is the only reason you did that to him, then he did not deserve that to be done to him. His family is probably sick with worry and he should be turned back to normal. The tent was in silence as everyone stared at him while Zoe looked ready to explode again. Artemis bit her lip before sighing and clicked her fingers, making Zoe huff and Naruto give her a thankful smile. In return she gave him a small smile. Perhaps I do need a better reason to turn boys into jackalopes. It's just so fun though. She thought before getting back on topic. Hundreds of miles away a jackalope turned into a naked teenage boy who looked around his surroundings with bits of leaves in his mouth, unsure of where he was and how he got there. I have asked you here so I could get your recounts of what happened before the hunters appeared. I would like to know if the manticore said anything of interest. I would like to hear it from the two of you. She said as she looked at Percy and Bianca. They both nodded and explained as best as they could. Naruto listened in as well since he had not arrived by that point. By the end of their stories, everyone had a worried look on their faces. Artemis put her hand thoughtfully on her silver bow. I feared this was the answer. Zoe sat forward. The scent, my lady. Yes. What scent? The three asked, curious at what they were tracking. Things are stirring that I have not hunted in millennia. Artemis murmured. Pray, so old I have nearly forgotten. She stared at them intently. We came here tonight sensing the manticore, but he was not the one I seek. Tell me again, exactly what Dr. Thorne said. I hate middle school dances. Percy said, making some of the shake their heads. I think she means after that, Percy. Naruto said. Oh right. Well he said somebody called the general was going to explain things to me and that he was preparing for something. He said as Naruto noticed that Zoe's face went pale and scared at the name, making him wonder just who this general person was. Whoever it was, it had her spooked. That's right, and then he said something about the great stirring pot and that soon we shall have the most important monster of Alpha 1 that shall bring about the downfall of Olympus. Artemis sat as still as a statue. I have been too slow in seeing what has been in front of me the entire time. I must hunt down this monster immediately. Zoe looked like she was trying very hard not to be afraid, but she nodded. We will leave right away, my lady. No Zoe. I must do this alone. But, Artemis. This task is too dangerous even for the hunters. You know where I must start my search. You cannot go there with me. I will find this creature. Artemis vowed. And I shall bring it back to Olympus by winter solstice. It will be all the proof I need to convince the council of the gods of how much danger we are in. She then looked at three of them. Please make sure my hunters get to the camp safely. They will be traveling with you back to Camp Half-Blood where they will be remaining until I come collect them. What? Zoe blurted out. But, Artemis, we hate that place. The last time we stayed there. Yes, I know, Artemis said. But I'm sure Dionysus will not hold a grudge just because of a little, misunderstanding. It's your right to use cabin 8 whenever you are in need. Besides, I hear they rebuilt the cabins you burned down. Fine. Zoe gritted out before pointing to Naruto. But he cannot stay in there while we stay at the camp. He will need to move out. Wait a minute. Percy said, standing up. You can't do that. He is Artemis's flesh and blood. If anyone has the right to go into that cabin, it's Naruto. So that is unfair. Naruto has just as much right as the hunters do. Artemis said, looking at her lieutenant sternly, but Naruto then voiced his say. It's fine. He said, getting their attention. I can pack some of my stuff from my room and stay in one of the others' room. I'm sure the Hermes cabin won't mind me bunking there for a few nights. I'm okay with it. I don't want any problems to break out because of me. Zoe looked at him before nodding slightly before she left the tent as Artemis remained and again looked at Naruto with a sorry glance. You may all go back to your tent and get some rest. She said as they all stood up, but quickly she spoke up again. Naruto, please stay. Naruto looked up and saw his mother's pleading glance and nodded his head. I'll see you guys later. He said as Percy and Bianca nodded at him before they walked out of the tent. When they left, the tent flap closed behind them and it went into silence, the only sound being the flickers of the fire. Naruto stood there not really knowing what to say as his mother stood from her chair and slowly made her way towards him. Each step she took felt like long and lengthy as she avoided the fire. Her eyes never left Naruto's, and Naruto could now see how much love she was showing in them at this moment in time. She stopped in front of him with her being a few inches shorter than he was and took off her gloves. She lifted both of her hands and placed them on Naruto's cheeks as Naruto noticed silent and steady tears now making their way down her cheeks. As soon as he saw her tears, his own began gathering in his eyes and pouring down his cheeks. They stood there silently for a few moments just looking at each other before Artemis said, "My baby is so grown up." Naruto let out a small sob laugh and as quick as lightning, he wrapped his arms around his mother as tight as he could and buried his head in her neck and he began letting out the years of emotions that had built up when it came to his mother. Artemis did the same thing as she tightly wrapped her arms around her son as if she was never going to let him go again and she was going to keep him at her side for the rest of time. My baby boy. She kept repeating as she kissed his head rapidly, trying to show him as much motherly love as she could. I have wanted to meet you so much. He said, trying to get himself under control but was failing at it. Everyone always told me back in the Leaf that you never wanted me, that my own mother saw me as a disappointment and some demon freak. I have never had a mom before and I don't know how I should act around you. SSSHHHH. She said, getting her own sobs under control. I could never think that. Never ever. You are my baby boy and how I wish I could have taken you with me, leaving you in the Leaf was a mistake. But it will not be one I will ever make with you ever again. You are with me now. You are where you belong. Naruto happily smiled as he and Artemis embraced each other and when he leaned out to show his happy smile, Artemis couldn't help but smile as well. You have your father's smile. She said in joy. Yeah, everyone tells me I look a lot like Dad, but that I have a couple of features that I got from you. He said as Artemis played with the auburn streak in his hair. I have so many things I want to ask you. So many things I want to know. Artemis smiled at him before she linked her arm through his as they both wiped away their tear marks. This time until tomorrow morning will be ours. I want to know all about your life as well, and I want all the details, but let's go somewhere more private." Naruto nodded and they were engulfed in a bright light before they disappeared from the tent. They then reappeared on top of a hill few couple of miles away from the camp. Artemis led him to a certain spot before they both sat down beside each other, happy to finally be in the presence of one another. "Your grandma said you always wanted to stargaze with me, and that just happened to be one of my favorite pastimes," she said as Naruto smiled happily at her. "Come, look at the stars with me as we talk," she said as they both leaned back, never unlinking their arms as they shifted around a little to get comfy. "So what would you like to ask me?" she asked as Naruto chuckled and took a moment to think, since there were millions of things he wanted to ask and talk to her about. But he quickly settled for the one that had been on his mind for some time now, and he hoped his mom did not get too embarrassed when he asked it. "Well, I have always wanted to know," he said. Artemis leaned in a little. "How did you and Dad fall in love?" Artemis looked surprised before she blushed like a tomato that made Naruto laugh a little. "Naruto, you can't ask me that," she said a little embarrassed. "But I really want to know. My dad must have been quite a character if he managed to get the biggest man-hater in the world to fall in love with him. Otherwise I wouldn't be here. Oh, trust me, your father was a character. He was my true love as well as the biggest pain in the ass," she said as Naruto laughed at the description. "Alright, it was like this," she started as Naruto leaned in. "We met during my first trip the elemental nations. I was nearby the village when we met and he got rid of some bandits for me. He took me to the Leaf Village and showed me where I could stay. I thanked him, but he kept coming back every day to show me around and it was getting on my nerves," she said as Naruto tried not to laugh. "On more than one occasion I threatened to put an arrow in his ass. But the more time I spent with him, the more Minato began to grow on me and the more I began to enjoy his company. Then he asked me out on a date. Normally I would have said no immediately, but he had proved to me that he was not like other men I had met and will admit that I was curious to what a date was like since I had never been on one before. He took me on top of the Hokage monument and had prepared a simple picnic where we could eat and watch the sunset across the village. It was very magical and I think that was when I started having feelings for him. We then became a couple about a week after that when we shared our first kiss. After that we were together for almost a year before I found out I was carrying you," she said as she flicked his nose. "Did Dad love me?" he asked as Artemis gave him a sad smile and stroked his cheek. "He did. He was so happy when he found out he was going to be a father and he was so protective of me while I was carrying you. He went almost everywhere I went with you and happily put off his duties as Hokage when I had my checkups with you. Together in the house we lived in, we had decorated your nursery together with grey walls that were almost silver-like and your crib would have been right in the middle so that when the moon was high in the sky I could look down on you and make sure you were okay. So you would have left then? After I was born?" he asked sadly as she nodded. "Yes, the law unfortunately states that we gods and goddess cannot raise any demigod child we have. So as soon as you were born I would have had to have left. If I had not, then Zeus would have most likely come and forced me away, which he did have to do in the end since I did not want to leave you after the Kyuubi attack and Minato's death. So I would have had to have grown up without a mom anyway I look at," he asked since well he would have had his dad at least if things had not gone the way they did that night, a mom was something he would have wanted to have. "Actually we had come up with someone to take that motherly role in your life," she said surprising him. "Have you ever wondered why your last name is Uzumaki?" Naruto blinked for a moment and thought it over and now that she mentioned it, he did always wonder where Uzumaki had come from. "Why do I have that as my last name?" "Well, you see, before me and your father was together he was in a previous relationship with a woman called Kushina Uzumaki. She and your father had known each other since their academy days and your father had even saved her from a kidnap attempt. They were together for about a year before they called it off since things just were not really working out for each other, but they remained friends since they were each other's first love. Kushina and I became friends since she was a very strong woman in her own right and enjoyed putting men in their place, especially your father. When she found out who I was and that I was carrying you, it was decided that when I left, she would take over as the mother in your life and be the mother that you always deserved. She and Minato were more than happy to do so since they remained close to one another. In fact, though most believe it was Jiraiya that gave you your name, it was actually Kushina since she liked the name and thought it fit. Kushina Uzumaki. He thought, trying to see if he recognized the name, but he could never recall ever meeting or being told about a Kushina Uzumaki ever. This was the first time hearing it. "What happened to her?" he asked since he never knew her, he guessed something must have happened to her. "She died the night of the attack. You see before you, Kushina was in fact the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox," she said, making him look at her in shock. "It might be why she was so happy to the notion of being your mother figure, since the only time a seal is weak is when a Jinchuriki is in childbirth. Because of that fact the councils wanted to make sure Kushina never had children since they feared the Kyuubi could break free. So they took her chance to be a mother away. He said angrily as she nodded. But if she was the Jinchuriki then how did the Kyuubi get released? Artemis frowned and looked up at the sky. I don't know all the details since when the attack happened I was weak after just giving birth and so tired that I ended up unconscious about halfway through it. But from what I was told a man kidnapped Kushina as she made her way to the hospital to be with me during your birth in an orange mask. We can only guess he then ripped the Kyuubi from her and she must have died in the process, but again I do not know the full story. I only found out about her death the next day. Who was the man in the mask? Artemis shook her head. I don't know who he was, but whatever reason he had to attack the leaf, your father managed to defeat him and end him before he could cause any more damage. Naruto nodded and just lay there looking up at the sky and he thought over the new information he was given and would probably tell Selena all about it later on. A man in an orange mask. I wonder who he was. The mother-son duo lapsed into silence as they enjoyed each other's company and simply sat staring up at the sky. The night was beginning to get colder, not that either felt it, and they were beside each other still with an arm linked with one another's. So the hunters, Naruto said, and Artemis looked over at him. They are a little intense. Artemis frowned but nodded. Yes, the girls have had difficulty adapting to the news of you being here. While some of the younger hunters are fine with it, my older ones are having a hard time accepting it. So I guess that girl Zo is one of the older ones then. I know Zo can be a little intense like you put it, but she has more reason than any not to trust or like men in general. She has had over 2,000 years to build her hate for men and it is almost resolute. She is the one that I have always been most worried with you meeting. Yeah, I can see why, she does not seem to like me in the slightest. Artemis sighed and scooted ever closer to her son. You just need to give her and the other hunters some time. They will accept you in time, but you need to be patient. I hope so. I mean they are my family in a way and in some weird way I guess they would be my sisters since you take them and give them a home, right? He asked as Artemis practically beamed at him when he called them his sisters. I hope they can accept that, which I am sure they will. I know deep down I think they would like to be able to call you brother. He nodded before it was Artemis who now asked a question. So this daughter of Aphrodite you are dating? She said as he nervously chuckled. Yes, Selena, she is pretty great, huh? Well, I suppose though, are you sure she is the right one for you? She asked as he sighed a little. Mom, I really care about Selena and I do love her just like she loves me. Besides, Grandma Hestia likes her. Whether your grandmother likes her or not, I know for a fact that children of Aphrodite tend to take after their mother. They play with people's feelings and they break hearts. I do not want to see this girl play with yours. She won't, Mom. She is not like other children of Aphrodite. She is trying to distance herself from those kinds of thoughts and since then she has become a very strong person. Lady Shima did teach her while we were on Mount Myoboku and as you saw she handled that manticore pretty easily. What about Athena's daughter? Could some spark not be there? She said since she wanted her son to be with a girl that she thought was respectful and more important was worthy of her son. She was not going to let just some ordinary tramp take her son's heart. You know, Annabeth's like my sister. It would be too weird. Artemis huffed a little before nodding. Yes, well, nevertheless I would be keeping my eye on that girl. She said before Naruto shrugged. The rest of the evening was spent with the two just casually talking and catching up, with Naruto telling Artemis all about his last 2 years in this world, while Artemis told him about some of her adventures she had with the hunt. Neither paid much attention to what the time was and neither really cared. They just enjoyed the first really time they had spent together in a very long time. Eventually, before it struck midnight, Artemis teleported them back to her tent and made a second bed beside her for Naruto to sleep in since she wanted her son beside her for at least one night. Most 16-year-olds would have found it odd and had said no, but Naruto could care less and he happily changed into some sleepwear his mother gave him and got into bed. Artemis got in the bed beside his and immediately grasped his hand into her as they settled for the night to go to sleep. Naruto closed his eyes and began to feel himself drift off. Naruto. He opened his eyes to see his mother's eyes staring at him and watched them narrow at him. Yes, Mom. Is that a tattoo? Chapter 2 completed. Chapter 3. Chapter 3. Uncle Apollo. Naruto stood patiently with a small smile on his face as he stood beside Artemis as they and the hunters and demigods all stood on top of a nearby hill as they waited for dawn to arrive. It was colder and darker than it usually was, proving that winter was in full effect in the cold December morning as everyone was wrapped up warmly in their jackets, making sure they fully zipped up to prevent getting sick. On his left was Selena, who had her arm entwined with his, and then the other demigods, along with Grover standing behind them. Beside Artemis were Zo and the rest of hunters. The hunters had managed to put the camp away and take it all down as quick as they had put it up. It was rather impressive at how quick and efficient they had worked, once again proving why the monsters were known to greatly fear them. From behind him, Naruto could hear Thalia, Percy and Grover talking to one another in hushed voices. He scratched the back of his head, happy the lump his mother had given him last night had gone. Artemis had been less than pleased about the tattoo and had chased him all over the tent before she finally got him and tried to get rid of it, but Naruto gets squirming and getting out of her hold. Though she eventually let it go, she still gave him a good mother-size bonk on the head. The last time the hunters visited camp, it didn't go well. Normally the campers tend to just leave them be, but the hunters get bored quickly and they tend to pick fights when they can. They're always trying to show they are the top dogs. Well, I think things might be a little differently this year. Annabeth said as she and Grover looked towards Naruto and Selena. Naruto because he was the strongest at camp and they knew in a battle the hunters would not beat him. Zoe might have a good shot from her years of experience, but in terms of raw power, Naruto had that in the bucket loads. Plus with Selena and her newfound strength, it would no doubt be a surprise for the hunters to see a child of Aphrodite stand up to them and not back down like most would have done. Deep down, Annabeth could not wait for the capture the flag game because she knew this year there would be a new outcome. It's a little unfair how they treat Naruto though, isn't it? He is Artemis's son yet most of them just glare at him. Percy said as Thalia snorted. And you're surprised. Naruto is their mistress's flesh and blood, something they would all kill to be. And the fact that he is a boy just makes it worse. They are jealous because they are not her most important thing in her life anymore. Back in front Artemis sighed and rubbed her forehead. He is so lazy during the winter. Naruto turned to look at her. What is Uncle Apollo like? His kids at camp don't know much about him since he can't visit often or has no time to at least. Artemis grimaced at the question since most knew what a pain in the ass Apollo was to her most of the time. Your uncle is rather eccentric, sometimes I wonder how we are even related, much less twins. He is a major flirt and flirts with pretty much any girl, and he enjoys breaking the rules. He is self-centered, he is cocky, and he is quite arrogant. But despite his faults he does do his duties, even if he slacks at them most times, and unlike some other gods and goddesses, he does claim all his children. Just be prepared when you meet him, he is more like a kid than a god. She said as Naruto nodded. So in a way he is the opposite of you. He said as Artemis thought it over before shrugging. That's one way of looking at it though, I am at least respectable and presentable. She said as Naruto just smiled at his mom before he gave her a kiss on the cheek before looking back at the sky. Artemis smiled at the action and once again linked her arms through his and kept her son close to her since they would have to be separated once more when her twin arrived. From behind them, some of the hunters looked at Naruto in jealousy at how close he was to their mistress while Zoe gritted her teeth a little. So does he really drive a sun chariot? He asked since he had heard the legend of his uncle pulling a chariot across the sky. Yes he does though knowing Apollo it's probably turned into some kind of car or motorcycle. Depends what his pick of the week is. So do you have a chariot too or is that just him? I do as well but unlike my brother I prefer to keep it as a chariot since I enjoy the air hitting my face and the freedom it gives me when I'm driving it. She said smiling at the very thought. If you like perhaps when we next see each other I can give you a ride in it. Naruto's eyes brows show up and a big smile appeared on his face as he nodded his head. I would really like that. He said quietly as now it is Artemis who leaned over and kissed her son on the cheek. From the side and behind him, Selena, Percy, Annabeth, Thalia, Grover, Bianca and Nico all smiled as they watched the mother and son happily talk away with one another and were happy that Naruto had finally got a chance to connect with his mother even if it was just for a short time. But Bianca and Nico they both wondered who their Olympian parents was and hoped that whoever it was they would be as welcoming and as loving as Artemis was to Naruto. A few moments later everyone saw sky begin to lighten and the first small bits of the sun began to rise. It's about time. Artemis said as she unlinked her arm and crossed them. As they watched her eyes in a strong light hit them, along with a strong warmth that caught Naruto and the others a little off guard, though the hunters remained as stoic as ever. Close your eyes and don't open them until he parks. She advised them as they all followed her orders as did the hunters. Naruto could feel the light and the heat intensity and it made him want to unzip his jacket as he found himself beginning to sweat from the sudden intense heat. Everyone else was beginning to feel the same way. However just as quick as it came, it suddenly disappeared and the cold air was all he felt once again. Slowly everyone began to open their eyes and look in front of them. In front of them was a red convertible Maserati Spider and Naruto could hear Percy saying that's the car I always wanted. They noticed the car was glowing because the metal was so hot and it had made the snow all around the car completely melt away and looked like snow had never been there in the first place. Beneath their feet was now green grass that was a little bit wet, the only remnants of the snow from just moments ago. The passenger's door opened and who they could only guess was Apollo stepped out of it. Apollo looked around 18 to 19 years of age and had sandy blonde hair and tanned skin with very outdoorsy good looks. He was taller than Naruto was and had a very playful smile on his face, like he had just been up to no good. He wore jeans and loafers and a sleeveless t-shirt. Naruto had to admit after how his mom described him, he kind of looked what he had imagined, though he was surprised at how many physical resemblances he had with his uncle with the tanned skin and blue eyes. "He's hot," Thalia muttered. "Well, he is the sun god," Percy answered. Around the demigods rolled their eyes at what he said while the hunters were openly glaring at Apollo, who was happily making his way towards Artemis. "Yo little sis, how is it going?" he said happily as he showed off his pearly white teeth as he put his arm around his sister's shoulders. "You never call her right to me anymore. It hurts my feelings." Artemis groaned and removed his arm from around her shoulder. "I'm fine, Apollo. And I am not your little sister. Hey, I was born first. We're twins. How many millennia do we have to argue?" "So what's up?" he interrupted. "Got the girls with you, I see. You all need some tips on archery." Naruto couldn't believe how sibling-like these two were, yet at the same time they were so different, with seemingly being laid back and relaxed while his mom was more serious and respectful. He tried to stop a chuckle from leaving his mouth, but it failed. Apollo turned around and looked at Naruto for a moment as if he was trying to place him. He tapped his chin before his eye widened and his smile went so large that his face would have broken if it went any higher. "Little nephew?" he called out as he grabbed Naruto in a tight bear hug and lifted him off the ground. "Finally I get to meet my little nephew. Here, I thought you and Hestia were keeping him all to yourselves. Not anymore, Uncle Apollo is here now and I am here to stay," he said as he began spinning around, making Naruto laugh a little before he gave his mom a pleading look. From behind him the demigods all looked amused and Annabeth and Selena did their best to contain their laughter with their hands, but of course giggles would make it way through them. "Apollo, put him down this instant," Artemis demanded as Apollo pouted at his sister before he begrudgingly put him down as Naruto tried to regain his footing and cracked his back. His uncle was stronger than he looked. "Oh come on Artie, this is the first time I have met my nephew and he is probably the only nephew I'm gonna get from you after all," he said, making Artemis scowl at him and cross her arms again, making her look all serious. Apollo saw the look on his sister's face and sighed. "Fine Artemis, what is it you need?" Artemis gritted her teeth. "I need a favor. I have some hunting to do, alone. I need you to take my companions to Camp Half-Blood." "Sure, sis," he said as he smiled happily while Naruto leaned in to whisper in Artemis's ear. "Uncle Apollo is a little weird," he said as Artemis snorted a little, chuckled under breath, thinking how right Naruto was. "You have no idea how right you are," she said as Apollo raised his hands in a stop everything gesture. "I feel a haiku coming on." Artemis and the hunters all groaned as soon as he spoke and made Naruto and the others raise an eyebrow, all looking at the sun god questioningly, while said god cleared his throat and made a dramatic pose. "Green grass breaks through snow. Artemis pleads for my help. I am so cool." He looked at them all, looking as if he was waiting for their applause, but none came and no one looked very impressed. Well, no one but Nico, but Bianca was stopping him from clapping since it was not that great. It led to making Apollo pout like a child. The last line was only 4 syllables. Artemis and Naruto said in unison and smiled at each when they noticed. Apollo tapped his chin and thought, no doubt trying to come up with something new, so Naruto beat him to the punch since no one looked like they wanted to hear another one. "Why don't you just say and I will help them, that's 5 syllables and it matches what you have been saying," Naruto added as Apollo looked at Naruto with an emotionless face before Naruto found himself engulfed in another hug, which only made him groan. "My nephew knows the ways of the haiku. I feel so proud that I could spread this greatness," he said before he got a whack on the back of the head by Artemis. "Pay attention, blockhead," Artemis said as Apollo nursed his head. "These demigods will also be needing a ride to the camp. They are some of Chiron's campers." "Sure, no problem sis. Any friend of my nephew and my children are okay with me. Now let's see who we have here," he said as he began scanning amongst the demigods. He stopped at Thalia first. "Hey, you're Thalia, right?" "Hi Lord Apollo," she said a little shyly as Apollo was grinning at her. "Zeus's girl, yes. Makes you my half-sister. Used to be a tree, didn't you? Glad you're back. I hate it when pretty girls turn into trees." "He is not very subtle, is he?" Naruto said to Artemis, who just shook her head. "Let's see. Oh, and we have Annabeth Chase, Athena's golden girl. You know you're going to be quite the looker when you're older," he said, raising his eyebrows. It made Annabeth blush and shuffle in her spot while Percy glared at him, as did Naruto, who was really hoping his uncle was not going to perv on his little sister figure. Artemis meanwhile looked ready to rip his head off, as did the hunters. Then he got to Percy and instead of making some kind of joke he just narrowed his eyes and for a moment he had a look of seriousness on his face. Percy Jackson. Now Percy shuffled on the spot since the look Apollo gave him made him feel a little uneasy. Yeah. I mean, sir. Apollo looked like he was going to say more but decided against it. Instead of meeting the rest of the group, he decided to skip them, much to their delight and relief. Selena especially, since she did not want Apollo to hit on her with Naruto in front of them. That would not go well. Well. He said. We'd better load up, huh? Ride only goes one way west. And if you miss it, you miss it. Everyone looked over to the car and the demigods all wondered how they were all going to fit in it. Apollo chuckled and clicked his fingers as the car shined brightly, making most cover their eyes. Once the shining stopped, in the car's place was a shuttle bus. Alright, everyone on board. Apollo said as Zoe began to lead the hunters on first, while Artemis gave Apollo a good talking to. You do not help my hunters. You do not look at, talk to, or flirt with my hunters. Right, I know, Artemis. He said, waving his hand before he went forward, grabbed Naruto's arm and began dragging him away a little ways off. Apollo, what are you doing and where are you taking my son? She asked, glaring at her twin. I just need to have a quick talk with Naruto. It's something I really need to speak with him about. It shouldn't take long. He said as Artemis gritted her teeth. She would give those 5 minutes before she got her dumb ass of a brother away from her innocent son. But Naruto and Apollo. Naruto stayed quiet as his uncle walked him a few hundred yards away from the group as the demigods all began to pile onto the bus as well. Eventually they stopped and his uncle turned around to look at him. Now Naruto, first off I would like to say it's great to finally meet you. Since Artemis is my little sis, I am happy to know she finally knows what it is like to have a child of her own. He said as Naruto smiled at him. Oh well, thanks. To be honest, I had always wondered what you were like, since the camp usually says you're one of the nicer, more laid-back gods. Well, someone has to be, they are so serious up there and get so stuffy too. He said as he waved it off. Now Artemis told the others gods and I about your father and no, there are only some things that a boy can tell to another guy. I would like you to know that if you ever need a guy to talk to and to vent on, then let me know. Since your father is not with us, then I feel that as your uncle I must step in. Naruto looked a little surprised. Well, thanks Uncle Apollo, that actually means a lot to me, to know that I have you watching out for me like that. Apollo smiled at his nephew as he patted his shoulder. But that being said, I feel I must also ask this of you. He said as Naruto leaned in. That daughter of Aphrodite, is she your girlfriend? Naruto raised his eyebrow at the question, but he slowly nodded to confirm the answer. That's good. It means I am right in telling you this. Apollo said as he stood straight and gave Naruto a knowing look. Naruto couldn't help but feel a bubble of dread growing in his gut. You see, Naruto, when a man and a woman love each other. Back at the shuttle bus. Artemis sat on one of the shuttle bus steps as she waited for her brother to finish talking to her son, wondering what in the world he had to speak to him about. In the bus, Percy sat with Annabeth and Nico, while Thalia sat beside Bianca and Grover. Selena was on her own waiting for Naruto to return and take the seat next to her. Right at the back, the hunters sat right at the back, keeping to themselves, a few whispering to one another, while the rest just sort of sat there staring at the window. Zoe and the older hunters looked towards Artemis, who was waiting at the step, and scowled a little since they believed that hunting the creature that Artemis was worried about was more important than waiting for some boy, even if he was her son. The silence on the hilltop was quickly ruined when Naruto called out. No. I am not listening to this. La 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 la. I am not listening, la la la. He said as everyone looked over to see Naruto running away from Apollo, who was chasing after him. No, little nephew, you need to hear this. Apollo called out as he tried to chase him down. Apollo, what are you saying to him? Artemis shouted, looking angry at her twin as Naruto raced towards them. He's trying to give me the sex talk. He said as everyone who was talking before now went silent. After a few seconds, the demigods all started cracking up and laughing, while Selena was blushing like a tomato and tried to hide her face in her hands. Thalia and Annabeth clapping her shoulder were not making it any easier. If anyone back at camp heard about this, then they would not let them live it down. From behind, the hunters looked amused and a few snickered. Apollo heard as he noticed Artemis have a dark aura around her as she glared at her brother with eyes zoning in on him. Uh-oh. He said before Artemis came at him in great speed and tackled him to the ground and began choking him with a chain. Naruto stood next to the bus, having stopped running, and watched as his mother beat up his goofy uncle and shook his head. For a few minutes he just sort of stood there waiting for them to come back over, while scowling that he could hear Thalia and Percy still laughing. A few minutes later, Apollo limped past him and got on the bus, while Artemis dieted herself as she wiped away some of the golden itcher of her knuckles. The nerve of that idiot. She muttered before she stopped, and her attitude turned a full 180 as she now looked at Naruto with a soft gaze. I have to get going. The more time I spend here, the more risk Olympus will be in if I don't find this creature. She said as Naruto nodded. I know, but do you have to go alone? Can't you let me come with you? I can help. He asked as she smiled at him and placed a hand on his cheek. I would love to hunt with you, Naruto, but now is not the time. I must find this creature on my own, and I must use everything I know about hunting to do so. Naruto sighed, but he understood what she meant. When will I see you again? He asked since he just did not want to be away from her when he had only just finally got to her. I'm not sure. She said honestly, but now that we have met I can see you from time to time. Though it will not be often and not as much as your grandmother can visit you, but when I have some spare time from my duties, I promise I will visit you and we can spend more time together. It's a promise. A promise of a lifetime. Naruto smiled and wrapped his arms around her and hugged her tightly. She did the same as she held her son close, since neither knew when the next time they would be able to do so would be. After a few moments they broke the hug and Artemis kissed him on the forehead. I am watching you always. I'm always watching over you, my little moon and stars. She said before she gave him one last smile before she turned around and sprinted off into the woods nearby. Naruto watched her go, and once she disappeared he turned around and got on the bus. He took the seat beside Selena, who wrapped her hand with his. Are you okay? He nodded as she squeezed his hand. I'm fine. Just glad I got the chance to finally meet her. He said as Selena smiled as gave him a quickly peck on the lips before they made themselves comfortable. Apollo sat up in his chair looking like he was ready to go before he turned around and looked at the demigods. So, who wants to drive? He asked, making Naruto now know this small trip back to camp was not going to be as quiet as he thought it would be. Oh, I will. Naiko said, but Bianca put his hands down while Apollo laughed. Sorry kid, you're a little too young. He said as Naiko pouted. Ooh. Ooh. Grover raised his hand. No, Apollo said. Too furry. He then looked towards Percy and Thalia. Thalia looked like she really did not want to get picked and tried to make sure Apollo did not get in her line of sight. I'll do it. Naruto said, suddenly making everyone look at him while making Apollo grin like a maniac. Alright little nephew, now that's stepping up. He said as he got out of his seat and led Naruto over to the seat and put him in front of the wheel. How exactly does it run? I mean, I can't imagine you can pull the sun up into a local gas station. He asked as he looked over the front of the wheel, and Apollo laughed. No, nothing like that. My chariot is built out of human dreams about the sun. It's as old as the Western civilization, if not more so. Every day, it drives across the sky from east to west, lighting up all those little mortal lives that live on the land beneath us. The chariot is a manifestation of the sun's power, the way mortals perceive it. Makes sense. I guess so. Though you could have just said it was solar powered. He said as everyone including the hunters snickered. Hein, you are so much like hardy little nephew. You take the fun out of everything. Apollo pouted before he took the seat just behind Naruto so that he could guide him and make sure he did not crash the chariot. Though Apollo did lean over for a moment to hit a button on the dashboard and a sign popped up along the top of the windshield. It read warning. Student driver. Is this really okay for him to be driving? Selena asked Apollo since she did not know if Naruto had any past experience driving vehicles of any kind whatsoever. Don't sweat it. Maine to Long Island is a really short trip. He said laughing though no one else joined in with him. Go ahead little nephew, let's get going. Apollo said patting him on the back as Naruto played around with the clutch to get it right before he pushed down on the gas and started moving. Speed equals heat. Apollo advised. So start slowly and make sure you've got good altitude before you really open her up. He said as Naruto nodded while keeping his eyes on the road. Once Naruto felt they had gotten enough speed he tilted the wheel back and the bus slowly but efficiently went into the air. When Naruto felt he had gone high enough he kept it in a calm speed while taking a quick peek out the window as did everyone else. Beneath them were rings of trees that they had taken off from and had left behind. Everyone looked calm and happy at the speed they were going in, while Apollo looked a little bored. Naruto gave his uncle a questioning look. This is a little boring. Come on little nephew, be more lively. He asked pleadingly, making Naruto smirk, thinking he could prove to his energetic uncle that he was not as boring as he thought. After a few minutes Naruto noticed a highway down beneath them. Uncle Apollo, do mortals see the sun chariot? He asked as Apollo shook his head. No, the mist covers it. Why? Naruto smirked again and pushed down on the accelerator. Everyone in the bus noticed the sudden increase in speed. He then leaned over and flicked the radio on, which insistently was AC/DC's song You Want Blood. Naruto, why are we speeding up? Selena asked a little worryingly when she saw the glint in his eyes. You might want to hold on to something. He said before all of a sudden the bus did a nosedive, making many suddenly yelp and scream. That's more like it. Apollo cried out as the bus rocked down to earth at great speed and was only getting faster. Pull up, pull up. Annabeth cried out as they got to about 100 feet to the ground. When it got to 70, Naruto suddenly pulled up, narrowly missing the ground and shooting forward at tremendous speed. "Naruto, I am kicking your ass when we get to camp," Thalia shouted out, but it only made Naruto and the others laugh at her flustered look. Naruto pulled back into the air after his little stunt, missing the glare some of the hunters were giving him. Some looked out the windows again, and now down below the bus was a little snow-covered New England town. At least, it used to be snow-covered. As they watched, the snow melted off the trees and the roofs and the lawns. The white steeple on a church turned brown and started to smolder. Little plumes of smoke, like birthday candles, were popping up all over the town. Trees and rooftops were catching fire. "Pull up more, little nephew," Apollo said as Naruto nodded and mentally saying sorry to the people whose roofs were now on fire. "Look out for the billboard," Apollo cried out as Naruto turned back in front of him to see a giant cereal ad billboard appear in front of him. He swerved out of the way, making many cry out and jolt around from the sudden turn. The bus ended up back on the freeway and headed under a large tunnel where construction was currently going on with signs indicating that the road was blocked. "This is so much fun," Naiko cried out while Grover and Thalia held onto each other tightly with Annabeth and Bianca doing the same and Percy holding onto the side. Selena meanwhile shook her head as she sat peacefully on her seat with her arms crossed and seatbelt securely fastened, something the others seemed to have forgotten. "Oh, that's not good," Naruto said as the road ahead was blocked off and only a small gap was open. "The bus will never make it." "Pull the lever," Apollo said as Naruto looked over and without asking why, he pulled it. As he did, the inside of the bus suddenly began getting narrow, which made Naruto, Annabeth and Percy groan. Not this again. They thought, since it was the same thing the three sisters did in the taxi during the summer. When they hit the small gap, the bus slowly got smaller and tighter as it squeezed through the narrow gap. From then insides most groaned and the feelings it was giving them and made them feel uneasy. "I don't feel too good," Bianca said as she clutched her stomach and her face looked a little green. Grover and Thalia looked like they were feeling similar things. "I forgot how much I hated this." Percy winced out as at the back the hunters were mumbling and a few looked a little green as well, but were doing better than the demigods were. After a couple more seconds they got through the gap and the inside went back to normal, much to everyone's relief. When they exited the tunnel, Naruto managed to avoid some incoming cars before he got back to a safe height. "Hee, sorry about that," he said, scratching the back of his head while the demigods glared at him, as did the hunters. From that point everything else went silent as everyone waited patiently for them to arrive at camp, with the regular demigods anxious to get home, while Bianca and Naiko looked forward to seeing what their new home looked like. The hunters though were dreading it and were mentally preparing themselves. "There," Apollo pointed. "Long Island, dead ahead. Let's slow down, dear. Dead is only an expression." Naruto looked forwards and smiled when he saw Half-Blood Hill just coming into distance, as well as the cabins and the big house becoming visible. After 6 months away he was happy to finally be back home, where he hoped he could have a little time to wind down and cool off. "There it is," Percy said as Bianca and Naiko looked out the window and their eyes sparkled a little when they saw it. "Alright, now slowly descend in and land just beside the strawberry fields," Apollo said to Naruto as he pointed towards the spot he wanted him to land. Naruto landed and figured the time for joking around was over and now took it seriously. Slowly he began to lower the bus down towards the ground as they got closer to the camp. Everyone could feel the bus slowly lowering down and getting slower in speed as they watched as they flew over the hill. Eventually they got to the spot where they wanted to land and Naruto carefully pushed on the brake as the bus touched back down on the ground and rolled along the ground. Slowly it stopped and ended up a couple of meters beside the giant lake. From around them they could see the nature spirits and satyrs that resided at the camp noticed the bus and went away from it since it was giving off a lot of heat that was melting the snow from beneath them like it did back in Maine. "Alright, here we are. Good job, little nephew, that was some fine driving," Apollo said as he clapped Naruto on the shoulder. The bus door opened and Naruto stood up from his seat. As he did though, he turned to face everyone but instead was met by Thalia, who barreled towards him and jumped him. Naruto stumbled and fell out of the bus with Thalia on top of him while having him in a headlock. "You jerk. I told you I would get you for that stunt from earlier," she shouted at him as Apollo and the other demigods laughed as Thalia dunked his head in snow. The hunters at the back of the bus looked amused at the scene. Naruto didn't fight back and instead was laughing along with everyone else, forgetting the temper Thalia had. As she pushed his head into the snow, he looked up to see the camp in front of him, smiling as he did. "I'm home." Chapter 4. Back to old habits. The demigods all walked together as they trekked through the snow and slowly made their way to the big house where they were sure to find Mr. D and Chiron. Naruto and Selena linked their arms together as they looked at how pretty the camp currently looked in the snow. Since both were only here for the summers normally, it was different to see it in such a different season, not that it was bad or anything. The cabins were decorated with tiny flickering lights, like Christmas lights, except they seemed to be balls of real fire. More lights glowed in the woods, and weirdest of all, a fire flickered in the attic window of the big house. "It's so pretty," Selena said as the girls all agreed with her as they walked huddled together. "I have been so focused the last few months that I completely forgot that it's nearly Christmas. If I had known I would have done some Christmas shopping. I think we have all had things on our mind lately that we forgot," Thalia added, walking beside Annabeth. "With everything that has been going on, I think Christmas has been the last thing on everyone's mind." As they headed towards their destination, they saw Grover come back to their group after he had offered to lead the hunters to Cabin 8. Zoe has refused, but Grover did it anyway, much to their annoyance. When he came back, he had a black eye and a few bruises. "Grover, did the hunters do that to you?" Thalia asked, gritting her teeth and looking ready to march over there and start picking a fight. "It's fine, I probably talked too much," he said, but everyone frowned. Bianca, who was standing beside Annabeth, frowned a little. If that was how the hunters treated people, then she was glad she did not join them. "Well, either way, if they do that again, you let us know and we'll have words with them," Selena said, cracking her knuckles, showing everyone she was not afraid to get in the faces of hunters. Naruto meanwhile hoped a confrontation did not happen, since while he knew his mother cared greatly for the hunters, and therefore to an extent, so did Naruto, but this right here was his family. If the hunters were to hurt or bully one of them, then he would step in if necessary. "You think we should have brought the hunters with us to see Chiron?" Percy asked as most of their group turned around and gave him a look of "Are you serious?" "I doubt it, Percy. They looked ready to combust when they got off the bus. I think it will be best we just leave them be. I would prefer that they did not try to burn any of the cabins down the moment they arrive," Naruto answered. "Add being turned into pincushions," Annabeth added. "In that case, we should probably make sure the stoles stay clear of them. Hades know what those two would have planned if they catch wind that the hunters are at camp." Everyone shuddered at the thought. The stoles and the hunters were not a combination that mixed. It was like oil and water. They then lapsed into silence as before they listened to Nico speak excitedly at all the things around the camp. "Whoa, is that a climbing wall with lava coming down it?" "Yes, it's something to give us more of a challenge," Percy said as Nico bounced around like a kid on sugar. They all laughed at how excited he was before lapsing into silence again. Apollo had left the moment they all got out of the bus and had wished them all well. He gave his nephew a hair ruffle and made Naruto blush madly when his uncle slipped a condom in his pocket, telling him to play safe. The others wondered what had him so red, but he quickly dismissed it, saying he was just hot from the heat of the car. Bidding them farewell, Apollo turned the shuttle bus back into the Maserati Spider and disappeared in a flash of light. Naruto looked around the camp, and since this was the first time he had been to the camp when not in the summer, he was surprised at how empty it was. The only one currently here was the year-rounders. Outside the Hephaestus cabin was Beckendorf, who gave them a wave as they walked past. Ino, to Naruto's surprise, was still here with two of the other members of the Demeter cabin and waved at Naruto when she spotted him. "I'm surprised she is here. I'll ask her why she stayed later," he thought. The Stoll brothers, Travis and Connor, from the Hermes cabin, were picking the lock on the camp store. Annabeth promptly threw a snowball at their heads and told them to quit it before they took off running back into the Hermes cabin. A few kids from the Ares cabin were having a snowball fight with the wood nymphs at the edge of the forest, but when they saw them, Selena frowned. "Where's Claris? She's usually a year-rounder, so she should be here. You don't think something happened to her, do you?" she asked as Naruto gave her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, I am sure she is fine. We can ask Chiron when we get to the big house. I'm sure he has the answer," he said as Selena nodded, though it did not take away the uneasy look on her face. When they neared the big house, they all noticed it was decorated with strings of red and yellow fireballs that warmed the porch but didn't seem to catch anything on fire. Inside, flames crackled in the hearth. The air smelled like hot chocolate, which made all of them smile and close their eyes. The scene was warm and soothing. On the front porch as usual was Chiron and Mr. D, who were busy playing a quiet game of cards. Chiron's brown beard was shaggier for the winter. His curly hair had grown a little longer. He wore a fuzzy sweater with a hoofprint design on it, and he had a blanket on his lap that almost hid his wheelchair completely. Mr. D, though, looked no different and as usual was wearing his leopard print shirt with a Diet Coke in his hand, his substitute drink since he could not drink alcohol. As they got to the steps, Chiron looked up and his face changed into one of happiness and smiled as the returning and new demigods. "You are all back and you were successful, I take it?" he asked as Percy, Thalia, Annabeth and Grover nodded. "Naruto, Selena, it's nice to have you back at long last. I was not sure I would see either of you again until the summer. We finished earlier like we hoped and we wanted to come home," Selena said as Chiron smiled warmly when she said home. "Well, it's nice to have you both back. he said as he then turned to Naiko and Bianca who were staring at him in surprise. "And you must be the two new demigods?" he asked looking at them with kind eyes which made them both relax a little. "Yes, sir. I'm Bianca and this is my little brother Naiko," she introduced as he nodded his head. "It's a pleasure to meet you, my dear. My name is Chiron and I am the activities director here at Camp Half-Blood, meaning most of the training you will receive here will be headed by myself." They both nodded before he looked back at the large group. "There was no problems, I hope." "Nothing we couldn't handle, though we did not come back alone," Annabeth said as she huffed a little, making Thalia and Selena grin. "The hunters came with us. We ran into Lady Artemis and she told her lieutenant that they are to stay in camp until she says otherwise." Everyone watched as Chiron's face dropped a little at the news, while Mr. D groaned loudly. "Well, this is unexpected, but I suppose they were due for a visit eventually." "You sound like you don't like them, Chiron," Thalia asked, grinning still. "Oh, it's not that, my dear, I greatly respect the hunters and the work they do, it's just they tend to cause a bit of unnecessary trouble with the camp when they are around. The last time they were here we had to rebuild 2 of our cabins and said gods of those cabins were not impressed." They looked over at Annabeth who explained. "Some Ares and Aphrodite children made fun of them and argued with them a lot. The hunters responded by torching their cabins just as they left. It caused Ares and Aphrodite to be extremely angry at Artemis and apparently told her to keep the girls in line or they would make them pay." "They just sound like more work," Naruto said as he rubbed his head and they looked at him in sympathy. "Yeah, you kind of need to get along with them, otherwise things are just going to be mighty awkward between them and you. I don't think Artemis will like having to choose between the two," Thalia added as she patted him on the back. "Have they already moved in?" Chiron asked as Annabeth nodded. He turned to look at Naruto. "I believe we had a conversation when you were first claimed what we would do if the hunters ever visited," he said as Naruto nodded. "In that case it might be best if you move into one of the others' cabin temporarily. At least until they are gone. So do any of you mind putting me up for a while?" he asked, turning to look at the others. Annabeth was the first to look like she was going to answer, with Thalia and Percy following quickly after them. However, they were quickly shot down by Selena when she glared at them before turning and wrapping her arm with Naruto's. "He will be staying with me. I know my mother won't mind him being in our cabin." Chiron coughed a little. Perhaps that would not be a good idea since you two are together, correct?" "It might not be the best thing to do," Chiron asked, but Selena gave him a glare. "He is staying in my cabin and that's that," she said as she tightened her arm around him almost possessively. Chiron looked ready to state otherwise, but Mr. D finally voiced up. "Let them be, Chiron. You are not going to win," he said lazily. "Besides, if she gets knocked up then that's their own fault." Naruto and Selena nearly tripped over their own feet and blushed like tomatoes. "We haven't done anything like that," they both said, trying to look away from everyone. "Good thing too. We don't need any little Naruto or Selenas around camp just yet," Grover added, making the group laugh while they glared at the satyr, promising him pain later on. Seeing this, Chiron glanced towards Bianca and Naiko and then looked back to Grover. "Grover, perhaps you should take our young friend to the den and show him our orientation film." "But oh, right. Yes sir." "Orientation film?" Naiko asked. "Is it G or PG? Cause Bianca is kinda strict." "I would prefer Naiko not watched anything above his age criteria. I don't need him having nightmares," Bianca said firmly and crossing her arms, showing a bit of confidence and acted almost as if she was his mom. "It's PG-13. Grover said, and Bianca frowned and then looked towards Chiron. "Is there a lot of blood in it or a large amount of swearing?" she asked as Chiron shook his head. "Only a minor amount of blood and there is no swearing," he said as Bianca nodded and tapped her chin before sighing. "Fine, I guess it will be fine for him to watch," she said, making Naiko smile at her happily. Grover then led the two new kids away and towards the orientation room. When they left, Chiron looked towards the group remaining. "With the hunters here, I guess the friendly capture the flag game will be up again. I would like you all to go down to the cabins. Inform the campers we'll be playing capture the flag tomorrow evening." "Capture the flag? Will that really be necessary?" Naruto asked as Chiron nodded. "It's a tradition," Chiron said. "A friendly match whenever the hunters visit." "Yeah," Thalia muttered. "I bet it's real friendly. One, we have to beat them for once. They have 50 victories while we have 0. We have to beat them at least once." Annabeth pleaded since she really was sick of losing to them and she wanted to show them just how more skilled and efficient they were now. And she wanted Naruto to totally kick their asses. "Then decide amongst you who you want to be captain," Chiron asked as he wheeled around and went back to his game of cards with Mr. D. Everyone nodded and walked away from the big house as they all looked at Naruto expectantly while he just looked at them with a raised eyebrow. "What? Why are you looking at me like that?" Annabeth and everyone all looked at each other before they all nodded to one another. "We want you to be captain," she said. The color drained from his face a little as he heard what she said, and he groaned as well. Why me? They hate me enough as it is. Because you are the best one qualified to lead us against them. Who better to lead us against the hunters than the son of the huntress himself? Plus you are a shinobi, they are not. You know how to trap, to track, how to be stealthy, and therefore you know how they think. Naruto frowned, but he could see where she was coming from. Plus you and Selena are not the only ones who has trained over the last 6 months. We have all upped our training and we are much stronger than we were in the summer. We can do this and finally end the streak of being beaten by them. I want to stop them from always looking down on us. The group murmured in agreement as Naruto rubbed his forehead. You might as well. You know this is not going to be a battle you will win, especially when she has her mind set on something. Selena added, leaning into him. Besides, even if you were not the captain, they would still focus more attention on you anyway. No doubt they want to find out if their mistress's son is as great as people say he is. You realize they will probably try and turn me into a walking pincushion, don't you? He said as they all nodded happily. He rolled his eyes. Fine, I'll be captain. Good. Annabeth said happily before she sprinted towards her cabin. Then you can tell them about tomorrow. Good luck. She said before she disappeared inside. Wait, hang on, he said, shaking his head and turning around to face everyone, but saw everyone had already raced to their cabins and ran inside, none of them wanting to tell the hunters about the game the next day or have to talk to them in general. He looked to the Aphrodite cabin and saw Selena standing in the doorway. Come here after you have finished. Remember, this is where you are staying. She said before she closed the door behind her. Naruto just stood there a little dumbfounded before he pouted. You guys suck. He looked over to cabin 8 and took a deep breath before he began marching over. As he got closer to the cabin, he could hear the hunters talking quietly amongst themselves. Just as he was about to reach the cabin, 2 large blurs hit him at full force and knocked him down. He groaned a little and he would have attacked but felt 2 large tongues lick his face, leaving slobber all over it. Luna, Tiber, get off. He said, laughing as he pushed their heads away and stood up. He looked towards the 2 dire wolves. Looking at them right now, he wondered what the heck the wood nymphs has been feeding them, because instead of the little pups he had met 1.5 years ago that he could fit in his palm was now 2 large dire wolves the size of a donkey. They were still not quite full grown yet, but they were getting close. They both came up to his chest and could probably put a child on their backs. You have been gone too long again. Luna said as Naruto patted her head and hugged her. I'm sorry, I just had something to take care of, a few things back in my old home. But I'm back for good now. He said as she whined happily as Lewin nuzzled into him, as did Tiber onto his other side. Come on, you two can come with me. I think I'm going to need the backup when I deal with these girls, he said as he continued his way to the cabin with Luna and Tiber now following behind him. He reached the door a couple of seconds later and took a deep breath before he knocked on the door 3 times before he took a step back. After he knocked, he heard everything go quiet inside the cabin and after a few seconds heard light footsteps heading towards the door. After a moment the door opened up and showed Zoe Nightshade standing there. She narrowed her eyes when she saw him. What do you, she started before she noticed the 2 giant wolves standing beside him looking at her curiously, their yellow eyes staring right at her. From behind Zoe, some of the other hunters saw him and the 2 wolves and marveled the sight of the wolves. Look, I know you don't like me, but I am here just to ask you of 2 things. Would you hear me out without pushing me away? He asked carefully as Zoe shook her head out of her daze before she stood tall and proud and gave him a small nod. First, Chiron wants me to let you know that tomorrow will be the capture the flag game. He said as she nodded, though she had to fight a smirk. Yes, I had a feeling we would be extending our streak while we were here. The camp seems to enjoy losing. Instead of getting angry like she thought he would, he just rolled his eyes and waved his hand. Yeah, whatever. The second thing is I need to get a bag of clothes from my room. May I come in for 5 minutes so I can collect them? Zoe looked at him carefully as trying to figure out if he was telling some kind of lie or if he was trying to trick them, but she saw no deceit from him. After a moment she nodded and stood to the side, allowing him to come inside. As he walked in and made his way to his room, he saw all the hunters look at him, some in curiosity and others glaring. What he could tell about it was about 50-50 on curiosity and hate amongst them, which he had to take for now. Luna, Tiber, come in for a minute, but don't make a mess to their things. He said as he got to his door and opened it. From the front door, Luna and Tiber padded in as they drew the hunters' attention. While Naruto packed something into a bag as well as put a few bits into his trophy cabinet, he kept his eye on the 2 dire wolves in the main room and saw some of the hunters standing close to them but looking a little nervous to go all the way up to them. A younger hunter who looked about 11 looked most curious and he saw her hand flexing a little as if wanting to pet them. He saw Luna staring at her too and tilts her head curiously at the younger girl. He smiled at the little interaction. You can stroke them if you like. He said, catching all their attentions. They don't mind. Luna said you can approach her as long as you don't stroke too hard, while Tiber says if you give him a treat, then you can do the same. The younger girls all nodded as they gently approached Tiber and Luna, while they all got a few treats out for Tiber, who eyed them curiously. They slowly patted their heads and their fur, and the younger hunters smiled as Luna and Tiber whined a little in approval from the action and licked some of the girls' hand, making them laugh at the slubbery tongues. Naruto smiled as he watched the interaction as he packed his bag full of clothes and a few other odd bits and pieces before he figured he had enough. He slung it over his back and went out of his room and closed it. As he walked past the girls, he patted the two giant wolves on the head, signalizing it was time to go, and both Luna and Tiber got up and began following him out as the younger girls looked a little disappointed. "See you all at lunch," Naruto said as he was about to exit the cabin. "Wait," Zoe called as she got his attention. "About meal times. I think it would be best if you do not sit at the Artemis table. We don't want problems to occur," she said as some of the older-looking girls with her nodded in agreement and sent him a glare as if saying try and argue with us. Beside him Luna and Tiber growled and took a step forward towards Zoa Tilda and the older hunters, which made them look at the two fearfully and touch the hunting knives on their waists to defend themselves if necessary. Naruto though calmed them down by placing his hands on both their heads. "Take it easy you two," he said as it successfully calmed them both down. "They mean no harm." "Very well, if it makes you all uncomfortable then I will sit at another table. However, I would prefer to eat at my mother's table in the foreseeable future, so you may have to get used to the fact that I am here," he said, hoping to convince them to stop hating him and let him back in his own cabin. As he turned around and left he heard some of the older hunters snort and mutter that it was never going to happen, though the younger lot of the hunters, which was about half, seemed to be contemplating it. "At least I have a shot with some of them," he thought, since it was better than nothing, and made his way to the Aphrodite cabin. When he got there he saw Selena and two of her sisters in the cabin, the rest currently at their own homes with their parents. She looked at him expectantly. "So how did it go?" "Well, I'm alive, so I guess that is a victory in itself. Though I will probably be joining you at your table as well," he said as Selena frowned. "The older hunters have made it clear they do not want me around." "Where do they get off telling you can't stay in your mother cabin or your mother's table? You're her flesh and blood, not them." "Yes, well, they don't seem to agree with that fact. Though I think the younger members of the hunters are coming around. I think the older hunters are just so set in their ways that they just do not want to accept it. It's childish is what it is. And that Zoe girl, Thalia told me all about her. She really is a miserable old cow. She has a stick permanently shoved up her butt," she said as she pouted and crossed her arms as Naruto leaned in and pecked her on the lips, making her two sisters who were watching them smile in awe with the scene. "You fancy going to the stadium and get some training done instead of going to mealtime? I don't really feel like dealing with them staring and glaring at me." His answer was a sly grin on the face of Selena as she began putting her training gear on as Naruto went into the bathroom to change as well. Later on, the hunters all sat around the Artemis cabin eating, talking and playing, making enough noise that made some of the other campers keep turning to look at them and see what they were doing, since they were being very noisy about it. Zoe sat at the head like she was the mother and the one in charge, since that was technically true since Artemis was not there. She didn't laugh as much as the others, but she did smile from time to time. Her silver lieutenant's band glittered in the dark braids of her hair and saw gently and neatly around her head. Though she frowned when she looked around to see that the demigods they had arrived with from Maine were not here, neither was the annoying satyr or the two newbies. While she had not been happy about Bianca's decision, she would leave it be, since she did not need the annoyance of demigods telling her to back off and leave her alone. She just figured Bianca could do a hell of a lot better than the camp. She also noticed that her mistress's son was not here either and figured he was just being a coward and had run off. She wondered if the things he had accomplished up till now was done by either luck or because he over-exaggerated his accomplishments. Just like any other pig of a man, she thought as she turned to eat her meal before she felt the ground shake that surprised her and the hunters. They all looked around and noticed none of the other campers looked shaken up, in fact they looked as if they had not even felt it. They then felt it again and again and they grabbed onto the table to balance themselves. "What is going on?" Phoebe asked as Chiron and Mr. D took no notice of the shakes in the ground as they pleasantly ate their meals in front of him. Even the nature spirits were not bothered by it and went on with their day. "Chiron, what is going on?" Zoe shouted as she stood up only to be put back in her seat by another kind of shock wave. Chiron looked up from his meal with an inquisitive look on his face before it changed to a look of recognition. "It seems Naruto is training again. He normally takes it a little too far and I guess the others of his little group are with him also. I'm sure they are fine." As he went back to his meals, Zoe and the other hunters all looked a little astonished at the comment he made before Zoe jogged out with hunters all following after her so they could see what Chiron had meant. The hunters hastily made their way to the arena and went up into the stands where they saw Thalia, Annabeth, Bianca, Nico, Grover and Percy standing and watching Naruto and Selena who were in the arena. Naruto was wearing his normal training gear consisting of a black vest and black shorts, while Selena was wearing a sports bra and black short shorts. Said girl grabbed two knives from the one strapped to her thighs and threw them towards Naruto's chest at great speed that surprised the hunters, since only Zoa and a few others had managed to get that kind of speed from knife throwing. "Zo." Thalia said irked at Zo's presence. "Thalia," she said in equal disdain. They watched as Naruto and Selena fought one another in hand-to-hand combat and saw that Selena was managing to hold her own, though the demigods knew Naruto was holding back since he did not want to hurt Selena. He went for a kick to sweep her legs, but Selena jumped high into the air before she pushed herself away from Naruto by using his shoulders to catapult into the air. She flipped through the air twice before landing on the ground and grabbed a bow from beside her. She notched the arrow and fired it with great precision and speed that caught the attention of the hunters, since they had to admit that she held her bow with both a gentle and commanding presence that impressed them, even if they did not like her. The arrow shot towards Naruto, but to their surprise Naruto unsealed a hunting knife and blocked it away. Selena then fired a few more arrows towards him, but each time he deflected the arrows with his hunting knives, much to Selena's ire. Naruto then sealed them back away and brought his right fist up to the air before slamming it to the ground, making a large crater form in the ground from where he struck it and making another shock wave hit the ground. So that's what was making those shock waves, Zo thought before she narrowed her eyes at him. No one has had that kind of strength since that despicable pig Heracles. This is so cool. How is he doing that? Nico shouted as he watched with stars in his eyes, while Annabeth and Thalia had a similar look in their eyes, while the rest were gobsmacked at how Naruto somehow now had super strength and how strong Selena had now become. Percy, who was watching, had thought he had gotten stronger in the last 6 months, but in comparison to Selena, he would say that she could probably now kick his ass without too much of a problem. Everyone is getting stronger, yet I have not improved all that much, he thought. I don't think Thalia and Clarice can't say they are the strongest girl at camp anymore, Grover said as Thalia glared at him while the others nodded. Yeah, whatever training they did at Mount Myoboku, then it really worked, Annabeth added. Mount Myoboku? Zo asked, drawing their attention. What is this Mount Myoboku you speak of? There is no mountain by that name, she asked, looking for answers. Well, of course you wouldn't have heard of it, Thalia said as Zo glared at her. It's in the Elemental Nation and is home of the Great Toads. Naruto went there for training to better prepare for Kronos and Luke, she said, though she looked a little sad when mentioning Luke. Zo snorted a little. For him perhaps it was worthwhile, but why bother with the daughter of Aphrodite? Everyone knows they are useless. So she picked up a few tricks along the way, it does not matter. I guess he is just like other men if he falling for their charms, she said distastefully as a few of the older hunters agreed while the rest just stood silent and looked away. The demigods other than Nico and Bianca glared at Zoa and the older hunters while the other two just frowned. Thalia looked ready to break Zo's nose when a swish sound appeared in the air before a small thud hit the wall behind them and struck just an inch away from Zo's cheek. Though she felt a small trickle of blood go down her cheek as the arrow had managed to land a small and very thin cut on her cheek. Her eyes were wide as she put her thumb on the scratch and looked at her own blood before looking back down to the arena to see Selena with her bow in her hand, which was aimed directly at them with a stern look on her face. You hunters aren't as quiet as you're supposed to be, she said while Naruto stood a little ways away from her and looked up at the older hunters with a frown on his face, having heard their conversation as well. Zo gritted her teeth and stormed off again with the hunters quickly following after their lieutenants, no doubt to try and calm her down since she was known to have quite a fiery temper. Naruto shook his head in disappointment. She already didn't like him and now Selena and Zoa were hating each other big time. It was only making it more complicated with the hunters since they followed Zo loyally. As the hunters left, the two demigods went back to training as the others watched to see how much they had improved. That night. Should we really be doing this? One of the younger hunters named Megan asked as Phoebe picked the lock on Naruto's room with Zo standing beside her. All the hunters were gathered in front of his room door, all in their nightwear, which consisted of silvery gray bottoms and tank tops. Of course we should. All we will be doing is having a little snoop around and make sure the boy really does have honorable intentions. He seems a little too good with his saving everyone all the time, Phoebe said as she picked the lock and Zo nodded. After a few minutes of picking the lock and after muttering a few curses, a loud clink was heard. Phoebe grabbed the handle and pushed it open, making the older hunters grin. Two at a time, some of the hunters went inside Naruto's room while the others all waited outside, not wanting to go in since breaking into their mistress's son's room might be seen as a great offense. It's rather simple looking, Dina answered as they looked around. The older hunters, which was made up of Zoe, Phoebe, Dina, Ariana, Lillian and Jessica, stood in the room and gazed around it. Two of them sat on the big bed and felt how soft and comfortable the king-size bed was and admired the beautiful coloring of the sheets, forest green and silver. Zoe leaned over and picked up a few black arrows that were lying on the desk in the corner and examined it, noticing its fine craftsmanship, and saw it was exactly the same as the arrows they fired, other than the metal point felt a little heavier. This arrow is a little different. The metal feels a little heavy," she said while she noticed the other hunters look towards the cabinet on the side, which drew Zoe in as well as she placed the arrow back on the desk. "What is in there?" one of the younger hunters called out as a few of their peering heads looked through the doorway. "I think it's his spoils of war," Ariana answered as she flickered her chestnut brown hair to the side and leaned it, as did everyone else. They did not open it since they could see perfectly through the glass and they wanted to be sure it was not booby-trapped. "The Minotaur horn," Ariana said, leaning in to get a good look at the trophy, since in her time as a hunter, she had only come across the Minotaur once. "Hellhound teeth," Phoebe spoke as well, looking at a bracelet with hellhound teeth around it. There were around 8 of them altogether. "Gorgon tusk," Lillian also mentioned it, the tusk that once belonged to Steno. "The siren feather," Dina said, looking at the ruffled brown feather with small marking on it. "Is that a piece of metal?" Jessica asked, looking at the chipped bit of metal from Ares' blade back from the battle on the beach. "It must hold some kind of significance if he kept it in here. He does seem like the sentimental type," Zoe answered before all their cases turned towards the other spoil inside. It was a skull made of light purple crystal with sharp rows of teeth and 8 grooves where the eyes would have been. It was a little bigger than a human skull but looked far more terrifying. "What is that? I don't recognize it," Ariana asked as more of the younger batch of hunter leaned in, further wanting to see the spoils. "It's the Kraken skull," Zoe asked, narrowing her eyes at it. This was the first time she had ever seen the Kraken skull in her long life, and something she never imagined she would see ever due to its reputation of the strongest ocean monster in the world. "It's so beautiful looking," Jessica asked, looking mesmerized at the skull. "But why is it so small?" "The gods probably shrunk it so that it could actually fit in there and can be carried around. If not, the skull would be the size of a large truck. It is an impressive feat. Whether we want to admit it or not." Zoe sucked in her breath but nodded. While she didn't like it, she had to give credit where credit was due, and while she desired no type of relationship with her mistress's child, she had to have just a small inkling of respect for his skills as a warrior. "Well, that will be enough," she said, shaking out of her thoughts. "We have seen his room and there is nothing to worry about from him. He poses no threat to us or our mistress, but we shall keep an eye on him anyway," she said as the older hunters nodded and shuffled out of the room while the younger hunters wanted to get one last look before the door shut. The hunters then all quietly piled into their beds and let Morpheus take over. Chapter 5. Let's break the streak. "Where am I?" Naruto thought as he found himself standing in the middle of a forest that he did not recognize. The snow was fresh on the ground, it was night overhead with the moon and stars twinkling like little lights in the far distance. He remembered he had gone to bed in the Aphrodite cabin with Selena cuddled up next to him like they had been doing for the last 6 months. He had fallen asleep relatively quickly and when he shut his eyes he found himself here in this forest. "Am I dreaming?" Percy had said his dreams made him feel like he was actually there, which in some of his dream that had been the case. But that they always had some kind of message to them. Like something was going to happen, something big. Naruto stood there not really sure what to do when he heard some branches rustling from behind him. Turning around, he stood and watched as a large silver wolf jumped out of the bushes a little in front of him. The wolf was large, a bit larger than Luna and Tiber, with silvery white fur that shined under the moonlight. He leaned in a little closer and he saw the eyes of the wolf. They were silvery yellow and he instantly recognized them since one of his eyes was the same color. "Mom?" he said as tried to lean towards the wolf a little. He spoke, but the wolf obviously did not hear him since she just trotted past him with her eyes centered in front of her as if focusing in on something before she then changed from a jog and into running. "Wait, where are you going?" he asked and quickly followed after the wolf as she jogged away and leapt through the bushes, gracefully dodging branches and holes in the ground as Naruto did his best to keep up and chase after he. It continued like this for a good 10 minutes as every time he got close, she suddenly ran faster and picked up the pace. His ninja speed was on a high level, but even with that, he was struggling to catch up to her. "Please mom, wait," he called and finally it looked like she listened when the silver wolf suddenly stopped in her tracks, but her head was whipping from side to side as if noticing someone was following her. A low growl came out of her throat and her shoulders and legs tensed. She looked like she was about to turn around and face him when around the wolf a large golden net suddenly got thrown at her, and large creatures covered in shadows came out of the woods around her and pinned her down as she struggled to break free of the net as her jaw snapped at the net only for it to have no effect. "Mom?" He called out but found himself stuck in the spot and could not move. He tried to shake his body and tensed his muscles, but it did nothing to help. He was stood frozen as he watched as this wolf version of his mother was successfully pinned down and captured by these shadow people and felt as helpless as a child. From in front of them and gaining the attention of the silver wolf a large shadow of a man appeared. He could not see who it was, but by the stature and the way he held himself he had to have been a man of great power since the earth beneath his feet seemed to crack under his weight and power. He looked at the wolf and saw it was staring at the large man in slight fear as a large smirk appeared on his face. The man's hand went forward and went to grab the wolf just as Naruto finally managed to start moving and lunged forward. "Nuo!" Naruto screamed out as the dream suddenly ended and he shot up from his bed, letting the covers fall of him as beads of sweat ran down his face and his breathing turned heavy. "Naruto!" A panicked voice called as a pair of hands cupped his face and a presence appeared sitting in front of him. Selena appeared in front of him with a worried expression on her face as she looked him over and saw the state that he was in. She wiped some of the sweat from his brow and she saw the terrified look on his face, a look she had honestly never seen on him before. From across the cabin her two sisters also looked in worry as Naruto's shout had woken them both up from their slumber. At the front of the cabin Luna and Tiber raised their heads and looked towards their keeper, wondering what was wrong with him. "What is it? What's wrong?" Selena asked worriedly as Naruto's eyes darted all around the cabin. Instead of answering Naruto jumped out of bed, ignoring the fact that Selena and her two sisters that had woke up earlier were staring at him in worry and put his shoes on as he then ran towards the door of the cabin and slammed it open as he ran out into the cold December morning. It was still dark out, but flickers of the morning sun could be seen making its way over the horizon, getting ready to illuminate the day. "Naruto, wait!" Selena called, but it fell on deaf ears. She then jumped out of bed, put her night robe on before she put her shoes on, and quickly followed after Naruto. Naruto was running at great speed as he ran towards the big house. He needed to tell Chiron and Mr. D what had happened in his dream. He knew it meant something, and he knew something had happened to Artemis. The man that took her was powerful, Naruto could feel that even if it was just a dream, but it also felt dark. Not as dark as Chronos was but defiantly close. He got to the door and banged on the front door multiple times hoping to get someone's attention inside. He didn't care who it was, but he needed to speak to either Chiron or Mr. D. They needed to know about the dream. As he waited for an answer he heard another door slam open from way behind him and looked over to see his own nightshade sprinting towards the big house in a similar state that he was in moment ago. Selena too was heading towards him, but at a more delicate pace, trying not to trip over in the snow. Zo saw Naruto at the front door and looked a little intrigued and curious as to why he was there before shaking her head and banging on the door, similar to what Naruto had done moment before. When Selena arrived it looked at Naruto questioning as to why he freaked out moment earlier, the sound of rolling wheels could be heard from behind the door. After another moment of waiting it opened to find a recent woken up and robed Chiron. "Naruto, Selena, Miss Nightshade, what brings you here this early?" he said as he looked at the clock behind him to see it was little over 6 o'clock. "Someone kidnapped my mother mistress." Naruto and Zo said at the same time before they looked at each other in surprise. Zo looked away first before Naruto did and both looked at Chiron expectantly. Chiron's face first showed surprise at their claims before he turned completely serious. "You both best come in," he said as he wheeled back and led them to his office. When they arrived, he motioned for both of them to start explaining. Naruto motioned for Zo to start and so Zo began explaining that she had a dream about her mistress in her deer form and that she was captured by men in shadows that she did not recognize and a larger man who the deer seemed to hold some fear over. "That's almost the same as mine," Naruto said gaining their attention. "But she was not in a deer form though. In my dream she was a silver wolf that was a bit bigger than Luna and Tiber." Zo contemplated the thought for a moment before speaking. The deer is her sacred animal, and while the wolf is not, it is a very special and endeared animal to Artemis since we use normal wolves in the hunt a lot and she has always shown great fondness over them. I also believe my lady has been known to transform into a wolf from time to time since she says she enjoys the freedom it gives her. So something has defiantly happened to her then. Since both you are dreaming about the same thing happening to her?" Selena asked as they all looked to Chiron. "It does look that way, child," he answered. "Then what are we waiting for? We have to save her," Naruto said and for once Zo nodded in agreement. "He is right, we cannot leave her to her captors. I will leave with the hunt immediately and track her down and save her," she said as she turned to head back to cabin 8 to tell her hunt sisters. "Then I am coming as well." Naruto answered, but Zoe whipped her head around to look at him. "We will do no such thing. The hunt can handle this. We do not need some boy to slow us down," she said as Naruto now began to feel anger build up towards his mother's lieutenant as she shot him down. "Like hell I'm not going. She may be your mistress, but she is also my mother. I'm going," he said firmly to Zoe, who gritted her teeth a little and looked ready to argue with him when Chiron's voice called out. "Neither of you are going anywhere," he said firmly as both whipped their heads quickly around to face him, both looking surprised. "Artemis told you that she did not want either of you to go on that hunt with her for a reason. Whatever she was hunting was out of your leagues, and if you go now unprepared then you will only be getting hurt or worse killed." Naruto looked at Chiron as if he had grown a second head, while Zoe looked angered by the words. "But this is my mom, Chiron. I can't just leave her in the hands of some madman. Who know what he would do to her," he said as Zoe for the second time reluctantly agreed. "I am not going to idly sit by when she could be in pain right now. Your mother knows what she is doing and she can handle herself. Your mother is an Olympian, Naruto. She knows how to take care of herself. She is strong and wherever she is she will know how to survive and will be looking for a means to escape. But tonight once the capture the flag game is over we will go to the oracle. Once that is done we will discuss what needs to be done, but until then you are all to remain in camp. Understand?" he said in a tone that told them it was not up for arguments. It may have been harsh, but he was doing this to keep them alive. Rushing in would only get themselves killed. Even if Naruto was a super-powered ninja demigod, he was not immortal by a long shot and he could be killed. "The hunters will not abandon our mistress like this," Zoe said angrily, not doing well on keeping her temper in check. "She has done too much for us to ever think of betraying her in such a way. Your mistress ordered you to stay at camp until she collected you. Are you going to break her order, Miss Nightshade?" he asked. In response Zoe clenched her fists, far from happy, and she gave Chiron a glare that would have sent Zeus packing. She kicked over a chair that was beside her before she stormed out of the big house, obviously going to tell the hunters what she had been told and that they were to stay until they were given the go-ahead to go. Moments after Naruto walked out of the office as well with Selena following behind worryingly. Chiron sat back in his wheelchair as he thought over this new development. With Artemis being captured it is a surefire signal. It's beginning and now there is nothing Zeus can do to ignore it. Later that day. "So let me get this straight. You think Artemis has been captured because of a dream both you and Zoe had?" Thalia asked as she looked a little skeptical. "Positive," he said as Naruto paced on the spot he was standing on and had been like that since he left the big house that morning. Around him Annabeth, Selena, Thalia, Grover and Percy stood along with Tiber and Luna. They had all gathered at the stump beside the woods and were either sitting around it or were standing with their arms crossed or in Naruto's case pacing around it. He was currently explaining the situation of the dream he and Zoe had, as well as finding out Grover already was aware due to having been camping outside the Artemis cabin, his fanboy phase still hitting him hard with the hunters in the camp. The only ones missing were Bianca, who was currently hanging out with Lacey, one of Selena's younger sisters who she had struck up a little friendship with, while Nico was currently with the Strolls, no doubt trying to corrupt another child in the ways of Hermes. They found later on that Claris was out of camp currently on a special assignment from Chiron. When asked what she was doing Chiron would not say, saying the fewer people who knew about it, the better. Selena did not like that and had made a big fuss about it since she wanted to make sure her friend was safe, but Naruto eventually managed to calm her down and reminded her that Claris was a big girl and she knew how to look after one another. Selena let it go for now, but it still played on her mind. "And Chiron says we have to wait before doing anything?" Annabeth asked a little skeptically. "That's right. He says after the capture the flag game, then someone will be sent the oracle. If Artemis has been captured then that will most likely help to confirm it," Selena said. Annabeth nodded and guessed she could see where she was coming from. Though it did not help Naruto, who looked more worried than anything. "But your dreams? It's a little far-fetched." "No, it's not," Percy said. "I got them all the time during the quest for the lightning bolt and then again during the summer with the fleece. If Naruto and Zoe both had the same dream, then it means it must have definitely happened." "But why is Naruto having them?" Grover piped up. "She is my mother, therefore there is a connection between us. That and demigods tend to have dreams about future problems from what we have already seen," he said, looking at Percy pointedly. "And Zoe tilde. Well, she has apparently been my mother's lieutenant for 2000 years," he said, surprising them all since Zoe tilde did not look a day over 14, possibly 15. "Apparently my mom gave her a home in the hunt, making her extremely loyal to her. I guess they built up a friendship over the years and they are close to one another. It would explain why she had the dream as well." Annabeth figured, making Naruto nod. "Yeah, but I think we are forgetting about another big question mark here, people," Grover added as everyone looked at him. "What do you mean, Grover?" Thalia asked. Well, I think we are forgetting that Artemis is an Olympian goddess. One of the major 12. Who in the world has the power to stop her? I mean, whoever they are must have been strong if they managed to overpower her and trap her like Naruto says they did. Everyone went quiet as they thought about what Grover just said, and they had to admit he had a good point. Whoever managed to capture Artemis must have been very powerful, easily on par with the Olympians, gods and goddesses themselves. Someone who has a grudge on her maybe? Percy asked. Naruto snorted though. Percy, my mom is a man-hater. Without a doubt there are a lot of people with grudges against her. Some of the gods will no doubt have some against her, since she is one of the few goddess who does not put up with their BS and does not sleep with them like others would. Well, did you see what this guy looked like? Annabeth asked, but Naruto shook his head. Like I said before, he was enveloped in shadow so I could not make him out. Only that he radiated power to the point where my mom looked slightly scared at seeing him. He was big as well, very muscular if his body shape was any idea. Ares maybe? Grover asked. We know how much he dislikes Naruto after the battle on the beach back last summer. Ares is not that foolish. He knows Zeus will most likely have his head if he pulled a stunt like that. Hades? The guy is not exactly friendly. Percy said as they thought it over, but Naruto shook his head to that too. No, Hades is too reckless to do that. Plus he has no reason to after my mother. If she did something to anger him then perhaps, but Hades is the kind of god that will go after someone only with a good reason and which may benefit him. Plus with the whole Persephone stunt all those years ago, I don't think he could afford to kidnap another daughter of Zeus. Selena said as everyone nodded. They contemplated on who or what could have been the captor of Artemis when Naruto had a thought cross him. What if we are looking at this wrong? He said, gaining their attention. We have been thinking that one of the gods was responsible, but remember there are older things in this world than the gods that are just as powerful as they are, if not more so. Everyone went a little pale when he spoke because they knew how true it was. There were older and fouler things in the world, things that some of them prayed they would never have to see or face. After all, their old friend Luke had teamed up with one said entity that made them all shiver when his name was spoken. With Chronos rising, what if this is his first act? Get my mother out of the way. Without her, the hunters are left leaderless and would not survive for very long without her. Plus Olympus would lose one of its best fighters and its best tracker. And from what my grandmother had said when she spoke with us, the monsters have been rallying together lately, making a very large attack force. Even immortals and other gods and goddesses could potentially be joining him. Which means we could have some of the other titans joining him as well. No doubt they want to take back the kingdom and the world that they once ruled. Naruto answered as Selena looked at him worryingly. But if it was a titan, wouldn't we know or have some kind of warning? Annabeth said. The titans that fought for Chronos in the last war are all imprisoned. They sat in silence for a moment before Thalius spoke. What if they don't know? What if they don't know that a titan has escaped or more than one has escaped? After all, Zeus is trying to ignore it while some of the other gods are just doing as they please. If a titan did escape, I bet they don't even realize it. If that is true, then we are in a lot more trouble than we thought we could be in. If Chronos does have titan allies, then it means his forces are growing far stronger than we thought and are preparing, while our side is still in disarray. Annabeth said as she held her head. They all fell a little quiet as Naruto looked up to the sky, his mind elsewhere as he thought of his mother and wherever she was. They all had different thought of what they could do, each with their own ideas, but none looked or acted as well as they wanted it to. A war with Chronos was inevitable, now more so than ever since the first strike had been made, and with it came the capture of Artemis. Please be safe, Mom, please just hold on until I can get to you. He thought before in the distance he saw the hunters exit the cabin and make their way to the mess hall. With his enhanced sight he could some of them had tear marks down their face and all of them had a look of worry plastered on them. He knew he was not the only one worrying about his mother, but seeing them in the state they were in made him feel a little bad, even if most of them did not like him. We should go. He spoke calmly, finally having stopped pacing and rubbed the back of his neck. The more we worry the worse it will get, so for now let's deal with tonight's game, get it done with so we can take care of bigger problems. Reluctantly they all nodded, trying to put the problem aside for now so they could focus on their capture the flag game against the hunters. At night. The two teams were currently getting ready in silence as they used this time to take a breather and get themselves physically and mentally ready to fight the hunters. From what he had heard from Annabeth, the main reason the hunters always seemed to win was because of their unique and amazing teamwork skills. That and their team always ended up getting angry and frustrated during the game because the hunters either teamed up to fight or used their stealth skills to take them out. I'll show them love is worthless, Selena's sister Lacey said and grumbled as she strapped on her armor. I'll pulverize them. Apparently she had a run-in with one of the hunters and had an argument with them after lunch, Selena said to Naruto as Naruto sighed and nodded. He began to understand why the camp disliked them so much. The hunters tended to start problems when it was really unnecessary and with things that just had no relevance. It was like they were just picking fights for the hell or it and for their own amusement. He began to wonder if a lot of them were related to Ares. At the side was Eno, Beckendorf along with the Stoles and the D'Angelo and their other cabin mates. He had not seen Eno at all since he came back and found out it was due to her apparently taking a shine and cozying up with Beckendorf. It took him by surprise, but the big Hephaestus kid seemed to genuinely like Eno and vice versa. He had no problem with it and even smiled at the thought of his two friends being together in that way. "I'll take the offense." Thalia volunteered, which was not much of a surprise. "Me too," Percy said with Riptide in his hands ready. "I want in as well." Annabeth muttered, wanting to finally beat the hunters for once. "Me as well," Selena said. "So everyone wants in the offense," Naruto said as dryly as the others laughed a little nervously. "I thought as much, which is why I have an idea on how we can do this," he said as everyone leaned in. Annabeth especially, since she wanted to hear what the plan would be. "There are 20 hunters and 20 of us. Now they will want to get it done as quick as possible, so I know without a doubt Zoe will be headed for the flag since she is their strongest fighter. So how we will play this is. Thalia," he said looking at her. "You along with Percy, Annabeth and Selena will head for the flag. You four want to fight them so bad, then you got it. Thalia and Percy, if you have to, use your powers. Soak them, fry them, or both, but only knock them out or knock them aside," he said as both grinned and high-fived each other. "Selena and Annabeth, now you two have a chance to really show them where you are in your training. Show them how far your skills have come in the last 6 months," he said as both grinned at one another. "You four will be Team A and you will be tasked with catching the flag. Thalia, since you are the oldest, you will be team leader for your group," he said as all four nodded happily. "Next is Team B, which makes up the rest of you. Beckendorf, Eno, Connor, Travis, Bianca, Nico, and everyone else, you guys will set up a defensive line along the creek and in a long line formation. Eno, I want you to use your mind jutsu to take over a bird and spy on the hunters and then report back to them how far away they are and when they will arrive. Some hunters may try to go round the edges, but I will make Shadow Clone to make them take a detour and send them to you guys. Nico and Bianca, since this is your first time playing, stick close to the Stoles, they will look after you," he said as they both nodded, though Nico looked like he was going to fall to the ground from the weight of the armor. "Team A, when the hunters appear at the creek, that will be the moment you go forward to their flag. Team B, you help make sure they get past them and then hold the hunters where they are," he said as both teams nodded. "Okay, but what about the flag? Who will be defending that?" Beckendorf asked as they watched Naruto grin. "That would be me. I'm curious to see who well my adoptive sisters compare to a shinobi," he said, making every person's face break out in a grin. "And since Zoe will be heading for the flag, I will deal with her. Later on." Naruto stood patiently at the flag as the horn signaling that the match would start sounded out through the air. He closed his eyes and waited. He had 2 lots of shadow clones sent to the rims of the forest, so the hunter could not use that to get past them. He told his clones not to hurt them, but to either force them away to the center or knock them out. Any time now Zoe and a few of the older the more experienced hunters will appear. That will be my cue, he thought as with his enhanced hearing, he could hear the sounds of fighting beginning. Elsewhere he felt his clones engage, meaning he was right with thinking the hunter would try to sneak around the edge, however they would not be able to with his clones in the way. Moments earlier at the creek. The camp team stood there patiently as well as they readied themselves, with Eno currently sitting on the floor with Beckendorf beside her watching over her body. She had left a few minutes ago and should be back at any moment. Just then a small bird appeared and landed on her shoulder. When it did, her eyes opened and stood back up. Okay, from what I could see, Naruto was right in thinking that Zoe would lead. She is at the front with 7 other hunters all coming this way. 2 pairs of hunters went around the sides like we thought. Good thing Naruto made clones to deal with them, Annabeth said as they all nodded. At the flag there are 8 hunters guarding it with 4 around it and 4 hidden in the bushes around it. The ones attacking should be here any minute. Then let's get ready. Thalia commanding as her team got ready to run to the other side while the others prepared to keep as many hunters here as they could. Silence rang out through the creek as not even the footsteps of the hunters could be heard, once again showing how stealthy they were, but they all knew that any moment now they would appear. They were right. 30 seconds later Zoe Nightshade alongside 7 other hunters jumped out of the bushes and in front of them. Zoe looked surprised to see so many in front of them but grinned, thinking that it was going to be an easy win. She nodded to 2 of her hunt sister and they ran towards them and jumped over them with impressive speed and ran forward while the other 5 would deal with the demigods. What she did not see though was as soon as she jumped, Thalia, Annabeth, Percy and Selena took off immediately forward as the 5 hunters began to fight them with their knives drawn out. As they engaged their opponents, from the sides 2 pairs of hunters were pushed out and skidded along the ground, making their hunt sister look over towards them. "What are you doing here? You are supposed to be sneaking towards their flag around the edges around them," whispered into one of the newly arrived hunters. "We got blocked. Lady Artemis's son blocked us with that clone ability and forced us into this area." "Was the real one with them?" she asked, but the hunter shrugged, having no idea. The battle in the creek continued as the hunters did their best to fight their opponents, but they quickly saw that their opponents were better prepared and were calmer than they normally were. Ariana went towards Ino and went to kick her with a quick leg sweep, but Ino quickly tuned around and caught it and wagged her index finger in front of her. "No, no honey. That's rude," she said as she pushed her away and swiped at the older huntress as she blocked the strike. The huntress tried to get a shot in, but Ino was not giving her a chance to before she found herself back against a tree. In a desperate attempt she went to grab her bow, but found Ino had disappeared from her sight. "Where did you go?" "You're pretty good, dearie," Ino said, appearing above her and chopping the back of the girl's neck and making her faint. "But you are not that good." Back in the center, the other hunters began pushing the campers back and threw Nico over towards the stoles, who managed to catch him while being a little surprised at how ferocious Bianca was. She seemed to have a natural gift with a hunting knife, further showing that she would have done well in the hunt. "Now," Beckendorf called out as the hunters were surprised to see 2 sons of Hermes in the trees and threw nets over the hunters. A few of them managed to avoid them, but the nets caught 3 of them as they got tangled up and had their weapons kicked away from them. "No, we can't lose this," one of the hunters cried out before they eventually got overwhelmed by the twice as many campers who now had the remaining hunters trapped against a stone wall. The hunters felt embarrassed that the campers had managed to beat them this way. This was not the campers they were used to fighting against. These ones were calm, collective, efficient and worked well with one another. The campers all looked a little battered and bruised and their clothing was ripped in multiple places, but they managed to still stand and ignore their wounds for the time being, not wanting to let the others down. And the hunters were surprised they all had smiles on their faces, happy that their teamwork has actually gotten them to this point. "You won't win, you know. Zoe will get your flag," she said as a few of them laughed. "What's so funny? We have our own hunter. I think he will be able to match yours," Beckendorf said as they now made sure none of the pinned down hunters managed to find a way out. But Team A. Alia, Selena, Percy and Annabeth sprinted forward towards where they knew the hunter's flag was being stationed. It was being held on top of a small rock hill, a good place since it meant they would have to climb a little to grab it and would give the hunters time to stop them. "They are nearby. I can feel it," Thalia said as she was eventually correct when they appeared out of the woods and in front of the guarding 4 hunters who looked ready to defend it, though were surprised that anyone actually made it to their flag. "Keep the flag safe," she called out as the 4 hidden hunters fired arrows with rubber ends towards them since they were not allowed to kill but could knock out, so they put rubber bottoms on the ends. Alia brought up her shield and blocked it while the other 3 ducked and rolled along the ground while Selena jumped forward and rolled across the floor towards one of the hidden hunters. She grabbed a knife from the back of her thigh and threw it forwards. It went through the bush and a yelp sounded out. She looked over the bush to see the hunter pinned to the ground with a kunai through her clothes. Percy and Annabeth meanwhile engaged 2 of the hunters who had their hunting knives out. "Bring it on," Annabeth muttered as she dodged swipes from the hunter she fought and knocked them away with her palm. All the while when the girl struck, Annabeth would land a quick strike to her with pointed fingers into the arm. Since Naruto had gone, she had continued her training with renewed vigor and had looked at where the various pressure points and nerve point were on a person. After learning where they were, she focuses on learning how to strike quickly into those spots with her snake style of fighting. That and she had taken up gymnastics to help with her flexibility and balance. Annabeth narrowly dodged another swipe at her before she again swatted a pressure point on the girl's arm. "Damn it, stop doing that," the hunter called out, but in her frustration, Annabeth took the opportunity to grab her right arm and swing her legs up and grab the girl in a head scissor lock. She then forced her weight down and the girl flipped in the air and landed on her back in a slight daze at what just happened. Annabeth then kicked the knives away. "That was awesome, Beathy," Thalia called as Selena fired a rubber arrow similar to the ones the hunters were using and knocked another one of the hunters that were hiding out. Seeing that the strategy just was not working, the last 2 hunters that were hiding came out of their spot and engaged them. However, the duo hunters worked together along with the 3 others that remained and began pushing them back. Selena defended herself as the 2 hunters found themselves having to push her away together. "How on earth is this daughter of Aphrodite so strong?" they both thought as Selena held her ground. Percy meanwhile clashed riptide with the hunter Lillian as the older huntress pushed against him and tried to use her superior experience level to win the battle, but Percy was managing to hold his own with his swordsmanship. The blade clashed as sparks flew from them, and next to them, Thalia was having her own battle with Jessica before Percy and Thalia were put back to back. "Hey seaweed brain," Thalia called. "Yeah, pine cone face," he answered back, not noticing the tick mark appear on her daughter of Zeus's forehead. "Let's light these girls up," she said as Percy grinned a little. He looked around and saw there was no nearby water source, but instead looked towards the snow. "I wonder if that will work," he thought before shrugging and giving it his best shot. As he closed his eyes and focuses on the snow around him, he felt that usual pull he felt when using his ocean powers he inherited from Poseidon. All around him the snow picked up and swirled around him before it all melted and turned into water, surprising the hunters, and quickly backed away. However, Percy's eyes shot open and the water that had gathered up shot forward and collided with the three hunters and knocked them to the ground while all of them were getting completely soaked. They winced a little as the three tried to get up but saw in front of them was Thalia, who had electricity sparkling around her right hand, which only made the hunter's eye widen a little in fear. "Wanna know what happens when lightning meets water?" she said, grinning before she shot a small burst of electricity onto the water trails, which shot through the water and shocked the three girls. It was only a small burst, but it was enough to give them a small shock and render them unable to get up as their bodies twitched in spasm from the electricity that was coursing through their body. Both children of the big three grinned and looked over to see Selena and Annabeth pushing the final two hunters away while the other six remained on the ground. "It's about time," Thalia said as she went forward, climbed the small rock formation, and to the hunters' dismay grabbed their flag, which was silver in color with the Artemis symbol on it. Earlier with Naruto. Naruto stood in front of the flag patiently and stood with his arms crossed and eyes closed as he sensed his surroundings. He could feel the battle starting at the creek as well as Thalia, Selena, Percy and Annabeth now heading towards their base camp. About a minute after waiting, three lots of footsteps could be heard coming towards, signaling that he was about to have company. "It's time to see if these hunters are as good as people say they are," he thought as he mentally prepared himself. Moments later Zoe, Phoebe and Dina jumped out of the bushes and landed in front of him. They grinned at seeing the flag but stopped and concentrated when they saw Naruto standing in front of it blocking their way. "You," Zoe said, scowling, as did the two other girls, while Naruto just looked at them. "You didn't think this was going to be easy, did you?" he asked. "The camp has changed a little since you were last here. They know how to work together as a team now, and they know that getting them frustrated and angry was what helped you girls win so many times before, as well as your superior teamwork skills. We don't need teamwork to defeat you," Phoebe said as she got her hunting knives out. "I should have put an arrow in you when I last saw you." "Oh, you mean when I helped get you out of being captured by some stretchy clown," Naruto said as Phoebe growled and shot forward towards him, not listening to Zoe, who was telling her to stop. "Phoebe, don't, he is using your anger against you," she said, but she did not listen. Phoebe swooped in and began lashing out at Naruto with her hunting knives, swinging them madly around like a wild animal. Naruto meanwhile was dodging them with ease by simply ducking on sidestepping her attacks. He could tell by the first time that he had met Phoebe that she was the kind who had a short fuse and a temper that could be easily pushed. Her temper was her weak spot. "Hold still," she said as Phoebe attacked him while Zoe and Dina took this moment to get past him and grab the flag. When they shot off towards the flag, Naruto noticed in the corner of his eye and he could not help but smirk. Zoe and Dina ran towards it, not noticing Naruto's grin, and got closer towards the flag, thinking it was not as difficult as Naruto made it out to be. However, as they got a few meters from it, Zoe noticed a shine hit her from around the flag. She squinted her eyes a little before they widened and noticed that there was a metal wire around it. "Dina, stop," she said as she stopped in her tracks, but Dina was not so lucky as she kept on going. "Why? We have the flag," she said as she reached out to grab it, but when she did, her foot tripped over the wire and made a snap ring out. She glanced around her before noticing metal wire spring out from being hidden in the gravel and wrapped around, pinning her arms to the side and taking her off the ground and hung her off one of the nearby trees. "No," she shouted out, not believing she got this careless as Zoe tried to get her down. "I would not try that if I were you, at least not until then end of the game," Naruto's voice called out as he stood looking at her with Phoebe unconscious and draped over his shoulder before he placed her down and tied her to a tree so when she woke up she could not run off or cause more problems. Zoe glared at Naruto as she mentally cursed. This was not the situation she wanted to be in and wondered what happened to the two pairs of hunters that were sent around the edges. They should be here by now. "So?" Naruto asked, cracking his neck and shoulder. "How are we going to do this?" he asked as Zoe stood ready as she positioned her feet in a fighting position. "I'm not like the other two. I have fought with Lady Artemis for 2,000 years. I have experience and skills that you could not even comprehend," she said, trying to intimidate him, but it had no effect on Naruto, who shrugged it off. "Different does not necessarily mean better," he answered as they began their own little battle. Zo as quick as lightning grabbed her bow and shot an arrow towards Naruto's head, to which he managed to duck. But when he did, Zo appeared in front of him with great speed and hunting knives drawn out. She is better than the others. He thought as he unsealed his own hunting knives and met hers. The two parried like that for about minute, trying to get past each other's defense and land some kind of strike, but neither were able to, their skills with the hunting knives seemingly being equal. Naruto kicked and tried to sweep her legs, but Zoa tilde jumped and avoided the attack. When she landed back on the ground, she attempted a palm thrust and to knock Naruto in the head with the back of her hunting knives, but Naruto grabbed her fist when it came towards him and blocked the strike with his own hunting knife. They fought like this for about a minute, neither giving the other time to breathe before they met in their attack again. Ina, who was hanging from the tree in the metal wire, looked astonished at how Naruto was able to keep up with Zo, since Zo was Artemis's best huntress by quite a margin and was the only one of the hunt who could make Artemis have to try when they sparred with one another. They then entered a deadlock with their weapons pressed against one another, and Naruto used the chance to push her back, using his superior physical strength to his advantage. Zo gritted her teeth before she pushed herself away. She ran towards a tree behind her and pushed herself away from it, giving her a good burst of speed and crashed into Naruto, sending him back a few steps. She also swung her hunting blade, and while Naruto managed to parry them away, he was caught off guard at how her speed suddenly increased and missed one of the strikes. Her blade met Naruto's cheek and landed a cut across it, as well as a small bit of blood trickled down from it. Zo's eyes widened when she saw her attack hit and took a few steps back. She used the moment from the attack to get to the flag. She ran forward and jumped with her foot landing on his shoulder before she pushed herself forward and towards the flag. Naruto narrowed his eyes and just before Zo could get out of reach, he grabbed her ankle and threw her back the way she came. When he threw her, it caught her off guard and Zo slammed into the tree, making her wince at the pain. "You're right. You are not like the rest of the hunter. You're the strongest out of them, I see that now," Naruto said. "I suppose you're not too bad yourself, at least for a boy," she said, having to give him credit where credit was due. The two engaged again and once again was equal in their attacks. Slowly though and surely Zo noticed that she was getting pushed back and pushed away from the flag and the others. She was losing ground and very quickly she began losing sight of the flag as Naruto didn't give her a chance to breathe and continued to get her away from the flag. Their blades caused sparks to fly as they met and their arms were swinging around so fast that it was almost a blur. Even their bodies were becoming blurs as they fought. Anyone who was watching would have had a hard time understanding what was happening. As they thought though, Naruto had a smile on his face, not even Selena was able to push him this far and he found himself enjoying this fight with his mother's best huntress. Zo as well, even though she would never admit it, had a tiny smile on her face and she found herself strangely enjoying this fight. Some people said that when two great fighters battle one another, they begin to understand one another and understand each other's life. But Naruto her saw that she too had some kind of hard past, that she was betrayed by someone she thought cared for her before his mother saved her and gave her a home, which was why she was so fiercely loyal. Zoa tilde meanwhile saw Naruto's hardships and little glimpses of his pain and began to understand why he wanted to prove himself to his other and the hunters. Why he wanted to protect people and keep them out of harm's way. Zo found herself hard-pressed as Naruto continued to push her back and back until eventually she found herself back at the creek. She looked over and was astonished to see her hunt sister grouped together and captured while the campers stood around them with their weapons, preventing them from escaping. They looked ready to head towards her, but Naruto skidded out of the bushes and landed in front of her. "Told you things were going to be different," Naruto said as Zo narrowed her eyes at him. The two looked ready to start their battle again, but rapid footsteps could be heard coming from the hunter's side of the creek. Everyone waited and eyes widened while Naruto had a massive grin on his face when Thalia burst out of the bushes with a silver flag in hand. "No." All the hunters called out as Zo was about to zoom over to stop Thalia from crossing, but Naruto got in her way and stopped her. The other hunters tried as well, but they could not get past the campers that had barricaded them in. Thalia then splashed into the creek and after a couple of seconds of tense silence, she crossed the other side and stepped onto the campers' territory. She had a big smile on her face and the rest of her team followed after her, all with smiles on their faces when they spotted her across the creek. She then held the flag high in the air and shouted, "We win." After another moment of silence, the campers all cheered as the hunters dropped to the ground in disbelief before they stared, cursing themselves for letting the campers get the better of them. The horn sounded out through the area as Chiron galloped into the clearing with a proud smile plastered on his face. He came across the campers all looking a little worse for wear, covered in cuts, bruises and their clothes torn, but they all looked in a joyful move and ignored it for now. "Campers win for the first time in whoever knows how long," he said before trotting up to Annabeth and the others. Naruto made some clones to go free the two hunters that were trapped at their flag before he walked up to Zoe, who had a scowl on her face and was looking away. He got her attention by walking in front of her. She sneered a little before narrowing her eyes at him. "What do you want?" "Come to rub it in," she said before Naruto's hand appeared in front of him. "Good game," he said with a smile on his face. She looked weary at him. "This had better not be some trick," she said before he shook his head. "It's no trick." She eyed him for a few more seconds before she relaxed a little and shook his hand and nodded to him. Naruto smiled at her again and was about to head towards Selena when gasps rang out through the camp. He turned around and to his surprise saw the oracle coming towards him. Her skeletal-like body creaked as she walked and eyes glowed green as she got closer towards them. The campers and Hunter both took a step back since something like this had never happened before. "She has never left the attic." Chiron spoke as the oracle walked towards them. She looked like she was heading towards Zoe, who stepped forward. "What must I do to save my mistress?" The oracle looked at her and just when everyone thought she was about to start speaking, she started walking again and walked right past her much to all the hunters and the campers' surprise. She kept walking until she stopped a few feet in front of Naruto. "Is this for me then?" he thought as he looked towards Chiron, who nodded at him. He took a deep breath before speaking. "What must I do to save my mother?" This time green smoke appeared out of the oracle as her eyes lit. The mist built up and to his surprise took the form of Hiruzen, Tsunade and Jiraiya. 6 shall go west to the goddess in chains. 1 shall face their pain in the land without. Rain the bane of Olympus, shows the trail campers and hunters combined. Prevail the titan's curse must one withstand and one could perish by a parent's hand. The three figures all said 2 lines each before the green mist began to fade away and disappeared back into the mouth of the oracle. Once it did, the oracle staggered a little before she dropped to the ground. Everyone stood in silence with the campers looking towards Naruto worryingly while the hunters looked at Naruto in both annoyance and jealousy that it was he who got the quest to save Artemis and not them. "Chiron," Naruto said in a serious tone, getting the centaur's attention. "I think we need to call a meeting. What if neglected Naruto abandoned the son of Artemis? End here and thanks for watching my video till the end.